inaccurate and fraudulent results. The Democrats have called it a desperate inaccurate and fraudulent results. To detect life on Mars. The six-wheeled rover will deploy a helicopter once it's reached the red planet. One of NASA's project leaders, Mimi Ong, says it will provide them with an alternative perspective.
It's another pair of eyes from a totally different vantage point.
Мы остановились в
Just being
прошлый
able
раз.
to get to places that we simply can't get to.
Продолжаем открывать
Really
города
slice of
Калифорнии.
cliffs or very steep,
Что будет дальше?
crevasses, craters,
Посмотрим,
places like that
куда нас
where
приведет
rovers just can't
дорога.
rope into.
And the weather. Rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland will clear to the north. The rest of the UK will stay dry tonight before a potentially hot day tomorrow. BBC News, it's 7
5 Live Sports Extra.
International cricket continues. After a thrilling test series against West Indies, England now play Ireland in 3 one-day internationals.
Oh, it's gone high over deep mid-wicket.
Shorty pulls and he's brilliantly caught. Brilliantly caught. And you can hear every ball, every wicket and every boundary as the world champions return to action.
Put away and it's going down to the boundary for 4.
England versus Ireland. The first ODI at the Ageas Bowl is live over on 5 Live Sports Extra right now.
5 Live Sports, The Squad with Nick Bright.
We are just 2 sleeps away from the FA Cup final, so it's time to dissect the day. It's Chelsea versus Arsenal, Lampard versus Arteta, 2 young managers with a point to prove, but who will get their hands on the silverware? Where are the key battles on the pitch? Who's going to start in goal? Will Luiz and Giroud make it to the right dressing room? These are all the big questions. And whatever happened to the FA Cup final song? Fear not, we've got you covered. And don't worry, we're not doing the singing. It's the magic of the FA Cup right here on The Squad.
5 Live Sports, The Squad with Nick Bright.
Although I like to think that my singing voice is pretty good. I'll save it now. I'm not gonna waste it here and there. I'll at least save it for when I can get on the next series of the X Factor or something. Anyway, hope you're well. Welcome to 5 Live Sport, The Squad with me, Nick Bright. I hope you've had a very nice day. The sun has been shining where I am, and hopefully it's been nice where you are too. Coming up, we're going to talk final fashion choices. Are you a Spice Boy or more of a casual Klopp? That's something we're doing. Plus, Steve Crossman is back for an FA Cup themed Steve versus the Squad. So my panel are going to have to get their thinking caps on with that. Plus, we want to hear from you. Text us on 85058. Text the charge at your standard network rate, of course. And don't forget to whack your name on the text, because we're all so used to sending messages now on, smartphones where you don't have to put your name because everybody knows who you are. But when you text the radio station, we haven't got the latest smartphone. It comes through on a computer, so we've got no idea who you are. You can tweet us as well at 5 Live Sport. And we want to know, right, if your side was in the final and putting out a song, because I want to go down this song route today, which celebrity, band and fan would and Hugh Jackman, big record that. I mean, I'm quite interested in it. Or maybe you want to hear Oasis team up with Ricky Hatton and release a track for Manchester City. You get the idea. We want the crazy, suggestions, sensible and surreal. They are all welcome. Right, anyway, let's introduce my panel then. And in the Arsenal corner, I mean, we should say the red corner. Vishali Bhardwaj. How are we all doing? Joel, I'll start with you first. How are you feeling, mate?
Nick, I feel wonderful. People are so surprised why I'm confident, and I keep telling them it's FA Cup, baby. We do this for a living,
I mean, you do have a reason to feel quite confident. Arsenal, the history's there. I think this is the 21st final for Arsenal. 13 wins, could be 14. So, when you hear stats like that, Rory, how do you feel?
Nervous, so nervous. I can't wait. I think that the FA Cup final is a magical day, but we've never beaten Arsenal in an FA Cup final. The memories of losing to them a couple of years ago and at Cardiff in 2002 are still very fresh in the memory. And Arsenal are a little bit like Liverpool are in Europe. Regardless of what's happened for the season, you just think they can pull it out of the bag. So I'm really nervous.
I mean, on the flip side of that, you played Arsenal in a kind of winner-takes-all. Well, it wasn't winner-takes-all because Chelsea were already qualified for the Champions League. But, last season, Baku, you saw what happened there and, Arsenal didn't show up.
Yeah, but the trouble is, I can certainly use that, but I have a propensity to be a fairly nervous bloke, and as much as I can use Baku for inspiration, I can also see why Arsenal will come into this fixture and have a point to prove. They'll want to put that right, won't they? What happened in Baku was humiliating.
Most definitely. Vishali, as the impartial person in this, but you're also a reporter for the Premier League, so you get around and about. Are you one of the lucky people that's going to be in the stadium on Saturday, or are you like the rest of us, not being able to get in, access denied?
No, unfortunately, this year I'm not going to the FA Cup final. I've been to the FA Cup final the last sort of 5 years, so this is the first time I'm not going to be there, but I'm going to be watching it. I've got my whole day planned out on that day as well. I've got a barbecue in the afternoon, a nice dinner planned for the evening, and plenty of sangria to go around while I watch that final, because I think it's going to be a perfect.
I should ask Rory, actually, what are you doing for it? Is it a group of mates, group of Chelsea mates, all watching it together?
Do a game of this magnitude, I'm not in the mood to celebrate, I'm not in the mood to see anybody else. I just sit down, I don't want any company. I'm a nervous wreck going into this. It's the FA Cup final. I know that the FA Cup has had a fairly bad press over the past decade or so, but I don't agree with it at all. I think it is a huge competition, the game's oldest cup competition. I'll be over the moon, totally ecstatic, if we manage to beat Arsenal in the FA Cup final for the first time ever. And I don't want to see anyone if it goes wrong, so I will be watching it solo.
Right, fair enough. Watching it solo, no interruption. Don't talk to me, basically.
Don't talk to me. Phone's off. Leave me alone. Don't want to know.
Right, okay, one of them. And then I guess if Chelsea do the business and win, you'll be all over social media.
Yeah. Phone's on. Really Larry. Acted like I was confident the whole time. Total hypocrite. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to be fair to you, though, mate, that is basically what most of us football fans are like. So, we can't say anything. Right, we've also got some live sport going on tonight, so we'll be jumping to those as the action happens. One day international cricket, England versus Ireland. Full commentary over on Sports Extra. We'll bring you regular updates from that match in Southampton. And we've got a big game in the Championship playoffs. Fulham take on Cardiff in the second leg to see who will join Brentford in the playoff final in a bid to make it to the Premier League. Alistair Bruce Ball is watching this one for us tonight, and Fulham go into it with the advantage, Ali.
Yeah, they do, by a couple of goals. It's going to be really hot work tonight. I don't think that will surprise anyone listening around the country this evening. Absolutely sweltering conditions here on the banks of the Thames. And you think tonight Cardiff have really got to score the first goal in this game, because they do start this second leg 2-0 down. They're actually trying to do something that no team has ever done in the history of the playoffs at this level, and that is overturn a 2-goal deficit or greater from the first leg to reach the final. So history is against them as well. Will Vokes, Josh Murphy and Danny Ward all come into the Cardiff team tonight? Fulham are unchanged. Once again, Alexander Mitrovic, top scorer, is not even on the bench. Scott Parker will want him fit for the final at Wembley on Tuesday if Fulham can make it, because tonight's winners will face Brentford there for a place in the Premier League. And if that is Fulham, then that really will be a cracking West London derby. But if Cardiff get the first goal, never know.
Yeah, that'll be a huge game if it is Fulham. But big news also coming out of the northeast today, Ali. Newcastle United, the Saudi takeover is off.
Yeah, Newcastle fans, Nick, have been here plenty of times before. This latest potential takeover from the Saudi Arabian-backed consortium is off, as you say. The BBC Sports editor Dan Rowan actually has written a piece on the website about it. It seems from the consortium's point of view, they've got fed up of waiting for the deal to be approved. It has been going on a while that it was still being looked at under the Premier League's owners and directors test, but the Premier League wanted to be sure it was an independent investment fund buying the club and not just a front for the Saudi state. I guess the good news for the Newcastle fans is that there are other parties out there still very interested in buying the club, but for now that deal is off and Mike Ashley remains in charge.
All right, thank you very much for the minute, Ali, and of course we'll be back out to you once that playoff game gets underway. But let's bring in Greg, a lifelong fan and Newcastle United Supporters Trust board member. Greg, I mean, sum up your feelings. Firstly, good evening. Thank you for coming on 5 Live Sport, but try to sum up your feelings and the feelings of Newcastle United fans today.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I think the main feeling amongst the fan base will be one of disappointment. At the start of this process, some 17 weeks ago, we surveyed our members, and 97% of them were in favour of this deal going ahead, based on 13 years of I guess, a lack of ambition under the current owner. But, you know, right now, I think Newcastle fans have been treated utterly with contempt by some of the football media, but primarily by the Premier League during this process. It's been made pretty clear that football fans are the least important people in a decision that affects them the most.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate because, you know, for years football fans have said that, but we've seen in the absence of football fans for the last, few weeks since the restart just how important they are. But obviously you're talking about a different aspect of why you feel football fans aren't important. So what needs to change then, in your opinion, so that fans can get what they want? Because, you know, this has dragged on for so long, Greg. You know, I'm not a Newcastle fan, but I know all about how much, you know, the fans want change.
Yeah, absolutely. But what needs to change? Well, I guess it would be a start if the Premier League would actually come out and say something, and not necessarily just in terms of, understandably there's certain things they can't talk about, but they can talk about process, they can talk about timelines, they can talk about what actually they do and are doing for Newcastle fans and what their role is in actually safeguarding the future of the club. They could tell us what their processes are actually in terms of holding incumbent owners to account. What are they doing to hold our current owner to account, who has no interest in Newcastle United being successful, and his only interest is Newcastle maintaining its status in the Premier League and nothing beyond that. You know, the Premier League have a lot of questions to answer here. You know, going back to it, the old saying, from our perspective, you know, in an ideal world we'd be talking about fan ownership, but in the current finances and the way the game is, we're a long, long way away from that, obviously.
Well, listen, Greg, I'd love to chat more, but we are tight on time this evening. So thank you for coming on 5 Live Sport and just expressing your disappointment there. And I wish you well.
Thank you.
That's Greg there, a lifelong Newcastle fan and also part of the Supporters Trust on the board. Obvious disappointment, as you can imagine, coming from the fans as well. Matt saying a sad and disappointing day, but I think we all knew it was going to happen. Still look forward to cheering them on next season, though. Andy says, when I told everyone this stuff doesn't happen to Newcastle, they didn't believe me. And Richard says, there will be another takeover. Ashley will be gone. We will get our club back. Yeah, it's been going on for a very, very long time. Just before we move on to the FA Cup final, Rory Jennings is with me, Chelsea fan. You heard Alistair Bruce Ball there mention that if Fulham get through tonight, it will be Fulham-Brentford in the final, which means we'll get another West London club in the Premier League next season. I mean, is that exciting for you as a Chelsea fan, or don't you really care about the other West London clubs?
They're not, you know, neither of the clubs that you've mentioned I would consider to be a particular rival. I mean, but it's a good day for West London. I just think that I feel a bit sorry for QPR. They're at home parked up while everyone else is off to Wembley, potentially.
All right, let's get into it then. Chelsea beat Arsenal in Saturday's FA Cup final. You can hear full commentary, of course, here. Is all about. So, Joel, you've already said that you're feeling quite confident. Is that a front, or you know, are you genuinely feeling confident? Because Arsenal haven't had the best season, if we're looking at it, mate.
And that's exactly it, Nick. We haven't had a good season, and there's only one game to go. All the boys have got to do is give it their very, very best for 120 minutes, because it could go to penalties. Do you know what I mean? So, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a hard team talk, is it, Nick? If you're looking at the Man City game, the game before, all Arteta had to say to the boys was, look, guys, you saw what they did to you a month ago. They embarrassed you. David Luiz, you made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Next thing you know, David Luiz plays, he looks like Nesta, game done. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same with this game. It's not a very hard team talk. All you got to do is go into the changing room and you look at Aubameyang and you say, you're the best striker in the world. Do you know what I mean? And they humiliated you last year in Baku. You know what you got to do, guys.
Well, that was my question, though. Sorry to cut in on you, but my question for you is, you know, it was all on a game last year, and they totally blew up.
Nick, sometimes you need to blow up the year before in order for you to be crowned the next year. You know, it's true. If you've got any... Look, tomorrow's not about who's the better team. We all know Chelsea's the better team. We all know Chelsea's in better form. But in these one-off games, Nick, is anything can happen. That's the magic of the cup. If you want to know the truth, I think Man United's a better team than Chelsea at the moment. Even the league table suggests so, even though it's by goal difference. However, that last game, Chelsea were all over them. It's just how it goes in the FA Cup.
It does feel different as well, Nick, this year. It does feel very different.
Rory, and then Vishali, you can come in
afterwards.
Yeah,
just in as much as I think going into that final last year, I think that Unai Emery is a fraud, isn't he? Like he totally lost that dressing room. The Arsenal team had no identity, no shape, no belief, and they were a very beatable team. Under Arteta, it seems to be a very different proposition. Look, I think Chelsea are the better team. I think if you were to do a combined 11, I think Arsenal probably get about 3 players in it. But it is the FA Cup final. Under Arteta, they proved in that Manchester City game that they can win against the odds at Wembley. So it's tight, man. It's so tight.
I mean, it makes for a good final. I'm very much looking forward to it because it is going to be quite close. Go on, V. You were gonna make a point.
Yeah, I was going to say I do agree with Joel to some extent in that with Arsenal, this is really similar to 3 years ago in that 2017 final, which they won. Chelsea came in, the favourites, the clear favourites, because they had just won the Premier League title. I mean, I was at that game when they won it at West Brom, and everyone had written off Arsenal pretty much. And Arsenal really had nothing to lose. They wanted to prove something in that final, and they did that. I mean, with that final, yes, you can look back to that first goal, that Alexis Sanchez goal, a bit contentious, and you think about how much goals do change games. But undoubtedly, Chelsea underperformed on that day, and Arsenal. With their recent history in the FA Cup, they just kind of gathered the momentum of being in that tournament and knowing what it meant to them, and also how important it was for them because they had finished outside the top 4 just before that, didn't they, in the league? So they knew that it was going to be important in terms of playing in Europe again the season after, and they pulled it out of the bag in that final. And I just feel like with this game, it's a really similar thing in that for Chelsea, it's about Frank Lampard winning his first trophy in his first season in charge of the Blues. It is the same for Mikel Arteta, but the added pressure, I suppose, for Arsenal is that they now know that if they win this, they will be playing in the Europa League next year. So there is that added pressure, that added element for them, and I just think it's going to be a close final. I think if you look at it this year, Chelsea are undoubtedly, I think, the favourites. But this is an interesting final because you've got 2 teams who've got the ability to score plenty of goals, but defensively, on their day, they can have horror shows, I think. So it's going to be an intriguing watch.
Yeah, I mean, what pressure? What are you talking about? We don't have any pressure.
There's big
pressure. It's the pressure to save your season.
No, not really. We finished 8th. As far as I'm concerned, Frank Lampard could die with the pressure because, right about now, Abramovich has unzipped the purse. But with the new signings that you get, if he doesn't start performing consistently, he'll be gone way before us.
Chelsea have already had a successful season. Chelsea qualifying for the top 4 has already overachieved. If Arsenal finish 8th without a trophy, that is a disastrous season. This game is to save your season. It isn't a game to save our season.
To be honest with you, do you know why I disagree? Because if you ask any Arsenal fan, I think the season's done already, mate. Do you know what I mean? If I'm honest with you, I think we're even surprised we're in the FA Cup final. Don't get me wrong, I know what you mean. If you win the cup, it's decent, but I would say there's no pressure on us because no one's expecting us to do anything. So that's exactly the point I'm chiming in with what V said. I don't think we have any pressure whatsoever. If we don't win,
I don't know, Joel. I've spoken to a lot of Arsenal fans, and it's all riding on this game. European qualification. Because you've got two schools of thoughts. You've got some Arsenal fans who Chelsea didn't qualify for Europe a few years ago, and then they won the Premier League the next season. That's not going to happen at Arsenal because the investment isn't there in the same way that it is at Chelsea. So European.
It would mean that you'd had a better season than the likes of Leicester City.
Totally saves our season.
You sound ungrateful, Joel. Because if if I don't know, if a Sheffield United fan was listening to this, for example, they've had a great season, but if you could say to a Sheffield United fan you could win the FA Cup, they would, snatch that out of you.
Yeah, you can't be sneery. You can never be sneery towards a trophy. Yeah. You can never be sneery towards a trophy. I think we haven't won a trophy since 2008. They would.
Yeah, we don't talk about them. We don't care about them. Look, we're Arsenal Football Club, right? As far as I'm concerned, we want to be where you are. That's where we want to be, where you are, Rory.
But you're not. So
that's what it is. I think if you look at the season as well, like the fact that there's been such a transition period for Arsenal, having sacked one of their managers, had Mikel Arteta join, had 3 months where he couldn't actually physically work with the squad. If you were, because this is the first season we finished, Joel, outside of the top 6 since 1995. So if Arsenal were to finish the season with Europa League football coming back to the Emirates Stadium next season and a trophy, that would be successful, I think, given what's happened off the pitch this season. So I think there is an element of pressure there for Arsenal.
All right, well, we'll continue this argument / debate in a few moments' time, but the first ODI between England and Ireland is taking place in Southampton today, and Nikesh Regani can update us. What's the latest, Nikesh?
Well, England need another 23 runs to win. They've got 148 balls to do it in, so should get there quite comfortably at some point soon. And Sam Billings has just brought up a well-played half-century. He's unbeaten on 57 from 49 deliveries, his third half-century in ODI cricket. Captain Owen Morgan solid at the other end, unbeaten on 22. In fact, we've seen another 6 there from Morgan. He takes that on to 28, 156 for 4 now, England. At one stage they were struggling there. They were 78 for 4 before this partnership got together. But these two have settled all the nerves and taking England close to a 1-0 lead here. They need another 17 runs to win, England. They are 156 for 4 in the 26th over.
Thank you very much, Nikesh. And you can hear that over on Sports Extra, of course. But right now, here on the squad, as part of 5 Live Sport, we are talking Arsenal against Chelsea in this weekend's FA Cup final. Charlie Barbage is with me, Joel Bayer, and also Rory Jennings. Right, let's pick out a key battle then. And the one that I'm going for is Luiz against Giroud. That's where I'm going with this. But just simply because, they've basically traded clubs. They've both had a bit of a tough time, but at times have been great. And it has to be said that, Rory, you must be going into this game quite happy with the form of Olivier Giroud, but also the fact that Arsenal's defence is quite suspect.
We've got our own problems at the back, though. That's the problem. I can't be too optimistic about their defence because ours isn't great. But going back to Giroud, look, I think this is fairly controversial. I don't think many people are going to agree with this. But I believe that Olivier Giroud is an elite striker. I think he is an incredible centre-forward. I think he plays in a way that his teammates enjoy playing with so much. And I think if you look at what he did for Chelsea in the semi-final against Manchester United, you realise that only a great striker can do that. He bullied that Manchester United defence. He made Harry Maguire look pedestrian, and he dragged Chelsea to a very, very convincing victory. So Olivier Giroud does hold the key to Chelsea winning this fixture. I believe that. The fact that David Luiz is stopping him, but I don't know what that means.
Would you have said that, just about Olivier Giroud being an elite striker? Would you have said that when he was still at Arsenal, or is it only since he's come to Chelsea that you've seen something you like?
Naturally, when a player plays for your club, you see them more often, don't you? So you're more au fait with what they get up to. I knew he was good. Of course I knew he was good. You understand how good he must be because Kylian Mbappe loved playing with him. He won the World Cup with France. I know he didn't score a goal for France, but played virtually every game. He was their starting striker when they won the World Cup. So he's obviously not a mug. The fact that he's this good, maybe I didn't realise it until he was leading the line for Chelsea because I've had a privilege of watching him do it for the past year or so.
Can't be that great if you ain't scored a goal in the World Cup, I'm just saying. Just wanted to put it out there.
He won the World Cup.
He won it, but, you're a striker, innit? Like, you're not a defensive striker.
Not taken in a different way, though.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm just chiming on the whole great debate. I think he's a very good striker, but saying someone's great, I think you're pushing it a little bit there, Rory.
I think Joel's had his Weetabix today. You've come on here looking for a fight today, that's for sure.
I think he's elite, though, Nick. I genuinely do. I feel like for some reason it's become rather fashionable game is built around. He is the best in the world at doing what he does.
And sometimes, Rory, he does have the kind of finesse. You know, we've seen him score some fantastic goals over time. You know,
yeah, he's not a great goal. He's not a great goal scorer, but he's a scorer of great goals.
Yeah,
when he puts the ball in the back of the net, it's generally done with aplomb.
Yeah, really good point. Joel, what about David Luiz, in your opinion? You know, he's had a bit of a stop-start season at Arsenal. Sometimes it's been calamitous, other times, like against Manchester City in the semi-final, he was, you know, superb. What are you expecting from him on Saturday?
Well, I would say it's more of a stop season. But yeah, definitely. I think what he showed in the last game against Manchester City when he played a couple of games ago, I believe that it's exactly what you need. He's a winner. Pep Guardiola said it himself. Just because the guy's lost a couple yards of pace, etc., doesn't take away from all the experience and all the greatness that he can bring to a team, especially in a one-off game. And I keep repeating this one-off game business because, again, you know, obviously when you get to that age, you slow down. It's harder to recover, you know. He's probably not playing with the most confidence ever, but all he has to do is give it his utmost. And people will be looking to him on a game like this because they're not going to look at him as a liability. You got the young boys like Saka, Maitland-Niles, you know, Holding, who won't have a lot of experience here. Tierney, they're all going to be looking at him going, okay, cool, this is the kind of experience that should carry us over the line. Even the likes of Martinez will really, really need him during a game like this. So I believe you're going to see David Luiz have a fantastic game. I believe him and Xhaka will show why it is that Arsenal bought them in the first place. I don't think they can do it during the course of a 38-game season, but in games like this, I'm backing them.
Absolutely massive shout there. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Right, back in the 80s and 90s, some of the best things that came with the FA Cup final was the team song. It was an element as important as the sun. Actual squad members joining in with the vocals, and also famous fans jumping in and making an appearance as well. So whatever happened to the FA Cup final song? You know, it just seemed to disappear. V, do you kind of recall, I mean, I don't want to ask you how old you are because that's very, very rude, especially on national radio, but do you recall the FA Cup final song growing up?
I remember like different versions of it. I mean, the ones that really stand out was Blue Day 1997, the Chelsea FA Cup song, which I have to say, after I'd gone to the 2018 FA Cup final when Chelsea beat Manchester United, I had to stay out in the press box to do all my sort of post-match work there, and I remember the song was playing again and again and again, and for a full day after that final, it just kept playing back in my head. That's how catchy that song is, and whenever I hear it, it just stays in my head for about a day. But I think the obvious ones that I remember, Anfield Rap, just because it's been played back so much, it's not necessarily I was, you know, old enough to even remember it, the year it was. I think it came out in 1988. So that was, you know, I was young then. But it was more the fact that you just keep getting the renditions of it, don't you, every year. There's also one, I think it was the Glory, Glory Manchester United song, which I've heard a couple of times, which again is really catchy. So those are the ones that really stick out in my mind.
Ones that spring to my head straight away. There was Chelsea. Rory must remember that one.
Day. That was the best one. That was Suggs. Suggs and Suggs from Madness did that for '97, and that was for most Chelsea fans a moment. We'd waited 25 years to win a trophy, and we won it that day. That was a song that we serenaded the team with. But it was great because a few years earlier we had a good one in '94. It was called No One Can Stop Us Now. We then lost 4-0, so it kind of put it right. But yeah, I think they're great, and I wish that they were a tradition that lasted, because I think they're fantastic. Do you remember that Arsenal one? I'm from North London, so a lot of my family are Arsenal fans. No, I remember an Arsenal one. It was done to the tune of Hot Stuff. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that.
Because the
1998, that was 98.
It had a great opening, because I remember it said something like, started off the season and nothing stops us everything was going right. Right. All about it, right. It was really that would be good. But no, they're great, and I wish they'd make a resurgence.
Do you see when Blue Day came out? Did
But no, there have been some classic ones. Now we played Borough, and it was a year that I think his record's been broken since by Louis Saha. But it was the year that Roberto Di Matteo scored for Chelsea and scored within 46 seconds, I think.
Great. Okay, we're going to attempt to revive the FA Cup song. Yep, that is right. You've heard it here first on 5 Live Sport. We're going to attempt to revive what is a lost tradition, in the words of Rory, that we're going to try and bring back. But we need to get an update down at the cricket, Southampton. I've no idea what's going on, Nikesh. Has something happened?
England have just won, yes. They've won this first one-day international as the sun is setting here in Southampton by 6 wickets. They were chasing just 173 to win in the end. Ireland did pretty well getting to that target. And down the ground, he finishes unbeaten on 36. And in the end, a comprehensive victory for England. They got to their target of 173 with over 32 overs to spare, and they take a 1-0 series lead.
Thank you very much. Top work today, Nikesh. You can watch highlights it's a little bit old hat.
I've got mixed feelings, to be honest. I think it's a beautiful thing when you get it right, but too many times they don't get it right. And I think it's a bit more special to do it every 2 or 4 years for England, you know, for a World Cup or a Euros. That's where I'd prefer it to go. But, you know.
Well, it's funny you say that because you wrote an unofficial song, didn't you, for Euro 2012? And what I love about this is it sold more copies than Chris Kamara's official one, which is unbelievable, Jeff.
Yeah, it's true. That was a little bit awkward, to be honest, but it was nice for us.
All right, well, look, I did mention that, you know, we have asked you to prepare something for us. I've not heard this, I should point out.
Have you not?
I've not heard it because I specifically wanted to hear it for the first time live, to get true reaction. Plus, I'm a terrible actor, because if I'd heard it, oh my, that is amazing. So, right, you're going to cue it in for us, so take it away.
Yeah, it's true. I guess this is what happens when you ask a United fan to write a song about the FA Cup final that his team lost in the semis in. So, apologies to Arsenal and Chelsea fans.
He hasn't done much wrong. Hey Roman, what do you want for Christmas? FA, they were in the cup final. Nobody came. In the year of 2020, it was Chelsea versus Arsenal. But nobody came. Nobody came. Nobody came.
We like that. Let me get a sound effect for that. Lovely stuff. Look at that. Rory's a fan, and he was the one screaming for these songs to be brought back.
Oh, I'm glad, mate. I'm glad you like it. Happy days.
I really liked it, especially the Abramovich impression. Was that you?
No, that wasn't actually. Fun story about that. That is Trigger from the Only Fools and Horses musical. Not the actual actor Trigger, the guy playing him in the musical. His name's Peter Baker. He lives above me. He's a good lad.
That is amazing. Wow. Okay. So what's next for you then? You know, because lockdown must be changing, you know, a lot of things for musicians. That the whole live music circuit's been shut down.
It's been decimated, hasn't it?
Yeah. So how's that fared for you?
I mean, it's not been ideal for me. I've lost a lot of money this year, and we're just moving our Christmas tour online. So I'm going to be doing a live stream tour instead of a real live tour this year. But you know, it is what it is. You make do.
So you say you're doing a live stream tour. Where can people find out more information about that after hearing what was an incredible FA Cup song, which I think people should take as the official one?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I mean, if they want to hear some other songs that aren't so tongue-in-cheek, then yeah, frankhamilton.co.uk. There's a third record coming next year, and yeah, you'll find me on the internet.
Cool, yeah, just search Frank Hamilton. I'm sure you'll come up on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the things that my parents don't understand. You know. Right, listen, Frank, thank you very much for coming on 5 Live.
Thanks for having us, guys. It's been a pleasure.
No, the pleasure's all mine. I really love the song, and look forward to hearing
we should do another one, man. I hear you're a bit of a singer.
Definitely not a singer. Definitely not a singer.
centre forward has got the legs to carry the shorts off as well, and I can't quite manage that, so I'm sweltering here in a pair of long strides. We're 5 minutes in. It's Fulham 0, Cardiff 0. As you say, Fulham starting with a 2-0 lead from the first leg, and what is at stake tonight is a place in the final, the Championship playoff final at Wembley on Tuesday night against Brentford, who I saw beat Swansea last night, and they were really good. What Cardiff are trying to do here tonight has actually never been done in the history of the Championship playoff semi-finals, which is overturn a 2-0 deficit or greater, a 2-goal deficit or greater from the first leg. It's been a really cagey start, actually. You know, I just wondered whether Fulham might go out, try and get that first goal and really put this to bed. But both sides are kind of standing off each other a little. And it's absolutely glorious here. I have to say the sun at the moment is just dipping below the level of the roof of the Hammersmith stand. We've got long shadows cast across the pitch. Beautiful evening. It's just such a shame. Same as last night as well at Griffin Park, that we cannot have the fans in at the moment for occasions like this, because it would be absolutely buzzing. But anyway, 5 minutes in, it's 0-0, and Fulham lead 2-0 from the first leg.
Thank you very much, Ali. We'll try and keep you across what happens in that game, of course. I love it that someone there, I didn't quite catch the name, one of the players is basically dressed for a Zoom interview, because that's what it is, isn't it? You wear a suit on the top and then shorts on the bottom.
Yeah, newsreaders have been doing it for years, haven't they? Just get dressed on the top half. I'm doing it now.
You probably are, to be fair. Right, anyway, it's time to put your FA Cup knowledge to the test, you guys. He's back!
Steve versus the squad.
Now, we haven't done one of these for ages. Steve versus the squad. That means Steve Crossman should magically appear now. Hello, mate.
I've done that. I have magically appeared. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, my friend. Not too bad.
What's the score?
What, in this? I've got no idea. It was so long ago, the last one we did. All I can tell you is you're winning by a long way.
Sure. I mean, I know the score. I just thought I'd see if you did. It's 19-8.
Right, okay. So basically, this is a winner takes all. This is a winner takes all scenario,
I mean,
sure. The answer to the question, just shout out your name. And
Nick, can I make a request?
Of course.
So you're saying winner takes all, right?
Yeah.
You're saying winner takes all when the score is 19-8. So I think I should be allowed a little request too, just to, you know, even things up. That's fair,
okay.
Right?
Yeah, fair.
Can I have Ali Bruce Ball?
You two are like two...
Ali is a great quiz master from You're Better Than That. I feel like he should be able to play. I haven't checked if he even wants to.
Oh, hang on.
He is trying to watch a match, but...
Yeah, Cardiff has scored the first goal here from a set piece. So we've got to try and concentrate on that and keep an eye on this game, but that does make things very interesting. Corner curled in from the right-hand side. We've only played...
Just here. Right, okay, he's got the answer right as well. It's 1-0 to Steve and Ali. Right, come on, squad, you need to get your heads in the game. Question number 2. Which team, I should say Ashley Cole with 7. Which team has the most... There's time pressure at the end of the programme.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe like a Manchester United?
Yeah, could be, Steve. Couldn't it? Worries one a lot. The only one that I'm thinking is Villa, but I don't know why I'm saying...
Oh, that's a good one.
Rory
is in.
Team, confirm. Oh, Joel, do you know?
You can't confirm.
I did put it in my hands. Jimmy Fred.
Glenn Hoddle
is incorrect. So it goes on offer.
Can you say the question again, please?
Who was the last player manager in an FA Cup final?
So he was actually a player manager at the time.
That is what the question says.
Yeah, who must have played in the final? Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking, Steve?
I've got nothing, if I'm completely honest with you.
Really?
Ali.
What about Hullett? I mean, I quite like the Hoddle shout. Hullett's
that's a great shout.
Do you think so?
Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go Ruud Hullet.
Okay.
I like that.
Okay, Hullet.
It's good, but it's not right. The correct answer is Dennis Wise. And
Millwall.
The Chelsea connection. You know, I thought that somebody would get that. Right, so it all comes down to this last question.
Oh no!
I just need to check if Vishali and Joel are still there because we haven't really heard from you guys.
Listen, I was on mute. I was trying to call it, and you tried to pass me, Nick.
Yeah, I don't want to hear your excuses. Right, here we go. This is the final question. Question number 5. Who were the last team to play in an FA Cup final and be relegated in the same season? Steve got it.
So it's obviously either Hull or Wigan, isn't it? So I'm going to go for...
Get it right, Steve.
50-50.
Wigan.
Go on.
Is the correct answer.
Is it?
It is the correct answer.
Yeah.
Heartbroken. Let's hope that's the only heartbreak I feel this.
Rise in coronavirus cases there. People returning to the UK from Spain already have to self-isolate for a fortnight. Here's our political correspondent, Chris Mason.
This is the second European country where at the beginning of this month travel restrictions were lifted and now there's been an about turn. Compared to Spain, Luxembourg is a tiddler. Just 120,000 Britons visit each year. But those that do will now need to quarantine for a fortnight upon their return. It's the latest illustration of the nervousness in government about spikes in cases in Europe and America and hotspots in the UK too. The Prime Minister's tone and his language now is peppered with caution. The man who itches to be optimistic, instead using words like focus and discipline.
Analysis by the Office for National Statistics shows England had the highest rate of excess deaths in Europe between the end of February and the middle of June. It found that all 4 nations of the UK had excess mortality rates higher than several other major European countries, including France and Portugal. More than 200 suspected migrants have crossed the English Channel to the UK today. The Home Office said they were on board at least 20 boats. A fall in the number of rape prosecutions and convictions in England and Wales to record lows has been branded utterly shameful by the Victims Commissioner, Dame Vera Baird. Last year, fewer than 1,500 suspects in cases involving an allegation of rape were found guilty, half the number 3 years ago. Harriet Wistrich is a solicitor and director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
They only want to prosecute those really, really surefire cases, which isn't the correct approach that should be taken. If there is reasonable evidence that this rape took place, there should be a prosecution.
Donald Trump has called for the presidential election in November to be delayed. He said the result was likely to be inaccurate and fraudulent because of the large number of postal votes. A Saudi-backed consortium has announced it's ended its £300 million bid to buy Newcastle United. Katie Gornall is at St James's Park.
It's a hammer blow, really, for the fans who've been dreaming not just of the end of Mike Ashley's 13-year reign, but also, under a potential Saudi takeover, the opportunity to have been one of the richest clubs in the world. If you live around here, as I do, it's all that Newcastle fans have spoken about, really, for the past 4 months.
Tributes have been paid to the BAFTA-winning television comedy director and producer Sidney Lotterby, who's died at the age of 93. Sidney Lotterby made classic comedies such as Porridge, Last of the Summer Wine and Yes Minister. The BBC's Director General, Lord Hall, said he had left a true legacy of laughter. And the weather, rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland will clear to the north. The rest of the UK will stay dry tonight before a potentially hot day tomorrow. BBC News, it's 8 minutes.
BBC Sounds.
Hi everybody, I'm Joe Wicks and welcome to the Joe Wicks podcast.
Let's do this.
I'm going to be speaking to some of my favourite people who inspire me.
You're stretching yourself, taking yourself out of your comfort zone, and actually it almost turbocharges you.
And I'm going to find out what they do to keep their mental and physical health in check.
You don't have to do classical meditation. You have to find a thing that takes you to that place.
The Joe Wicks podcast.
I think you're going to learn things that you maybe wouldn't have expected, and it might really help you.
Listen now on the BBC Sounds app. Friendship Season on BBC Radio 2 and 5 Live.
Friendship is all about those people in your life who are there through everything, not just the good times, but the bad ones as well.
Friendship to me means, I don't know, shared experiences, mutual support. Most of all, will they buy you a pint?
When life's a bit weird and hard to cope with, friends are the ones who give you that boost that you need to get through it.
Friendship Season.
I was once quite protective of my little friendship group. I soon learned, and it's a really important point, is this: new blood keeps the group alive.
On
they go out. We are joined by a man who has won the Champions League, holds the record for 8 appearances in the PFA's Team of the Year in the Premier League era, and captained England at the 2014 World Cup. It's the one and only Steven Gerrard. Steven, thanks very much for doing this, and thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm up in sunny Glasgow, which you'll be pleased to hear, which is very unusual, but things are still in lockdown up here, so it's been an absolute pleasure to come on and kill the boredom with a bit of banter.
Well, hopefully, and no football to kill the boredom with, is there, up there? It's obviously not started like it has down here.
No, we're just waiting for the fixtures, Gary, which we're hoping to come out in a couple of days, and we're hoping to get going early August. And we've also got, obviously, the second leg of the Europa League to look forward to. We're trailing by a couple of goals, so it'll be a big task, but hopefully in 4 or 5 weeks we're playing back for real, which is what we're all looking forward to.
These podcasts go out in a few weeks after we've recorded them, but right now it's less than a week, of course, since Liverpool were confirmed as Premier League champions. Must have been mixed emotions in a way, because you're not part of it as such nowadays, but at the same time it's your club.
To be honest with you, first and foremost, for me it was fantastic to bury a few demons. Not all the demons, but obviously from 2004 it was certainly a big relief. Being a Liverpool fan and an ex-player, you know, I know more than most the big long wait. Far too long for the club of Liverpool's size. And obviously I'm in touch with a lot of the players that are in that dressing room, so a lot of them shared that pain with me. So obviously it was fantastic for everyone connected to the club, but it was mixed in many ways because of my own experiences. Being a fan, being an ex-player, a lot of my family are Liverpool fans as well. And to be honest with you, I'm still on a real big high. I've been on a high all week, you know, just watching all the TV coverage and seeing all the emotions flying about. And in my own time, you know, I've really enjoyed the week being in the city as well.
Saw that nice post that you put out to Jordan Henderson, Stevie. Nice touch that, from yourself. Obviously having won and achieved so much at the club and probably understanding exactly what Jordan went through when he first arrived. It was. I thought it was a really nice moment from yourself to kind of recognise him like that.
Well, I think first and foremost, JJ, that's authentic from myself. That's not something trying to think. I think, being part of a football team in the dressing room, a lot of people in the public on the outside, they don't really see what happens and what goes on. Jordan left Sunderland at a young age. His mum and dad came and pulled me one night after a game and said, look, we're concerned about him. It's a big move for him. Will you look after him? Will you keep an eye out for him? And look, I don't want to take any credit for anything or the part I've played with Jordan Henderson, but I've seen firsthand a kid who took a massive challenge and a massive step in his career, and he took his fair share of whacks and bumps and criticism along the way, but what he did was he remained quiet, and he done his talking on the pitch, and he done his talking by working ever so hard in the gym and doing all the stuff you have to put around talent. And I'm just absolutely delighted for him now that he's getting all the rewards for that, and he deserves to be a Premier League champion, he deserves to be a European champion, and I hope all the individual accolades follow. So that was just me paying tribute to him, because I've witnessed it, I've witnessed the downs, I've witnessed the pain, I've witnessed the setbacks, and now to see him absolutely delivering is fantastic as a teammate and as a friend. And people that don't know Jordan, they're starting to see now that he is a top class footballer, but he's a wonderful human being as well, and that's more important for me.
Let's get to the gist of this and what it's all about, the top 10s. And funnily enough, you've actually featured a few times in this podcast already without knowing. We've recorded a couple of them. In the first series, before this particular podcast with Jermaine, we had Ian Wright and Alan. They voted your goal against West Ham in the 2005 FA Cup final as their number one FA Cup moment. I don't know whether you saw that. And in the first episode of this second series, Cesc Fabregas named you as the best player he's played against. Although Messi was disqualified as he'd already picked him as his best player he's played with.
Second best.
But, high praise.
Listen, very, very high praise and very flattered. And I did actually read it, I didn't see it, I read it. And the respect's certainly mutual. I mean, I played against Cesc, certainly in his younger days when he was at Arsenal, and you could see the potential in him as well, so I'd like to repay the compliments. I mean, we're lucky in the Premier League. I mean, JJ will echo this. I think certainly through Aria, we played with some phenomenal midfielders, Lampard, Scholes, Fabregas. JJ had all his strengths as well. I think the competition at that time, Jordan our decade, if you like, was so fierce.
Yeah, well, no doubt we'll come to that. Today we're counting down your own personal top 10 from your career, Stevie. So today we're going to ask you for the best player you've played with, the best player you've played against, the best manager you've played under, the favourite goal you've scored, the favourite game you played in. I've got a feeling I know what that might be. Football hero growing up, the funniest moment that you can recall, the best game you've ever watched, the craziest teammate. I'm sure there are a few vying for that spot, and the favourite international moment. We'll start, Stephen, with the best player you've played.
By the way, just before we start, are you allowed to pick sort of one for Liverpool and one for England, or is it just one?
Well, it depends. We can manipulate the rules as we go along. Yeah, but on this one, yes, you can. Yes, you can. But ultimately, you'll have to name one.
Okay.
Fire away. Best player you've played with?
Luis Suarez for Liverpool. Yeah. I don't think you'll be surprised by that. Absolute phenomenal footballer. Just a machine. I mean, someone who's never walked into a treatment room, someone who's never been injured, and someone who I always felt going onto the pitch we could beat any type of opposition just because he could do things that would blow me away on a football pitch. Just a phenomenal talent.
What was he like as a bloke?
Well, I think he's very quiet, which probably surprises people from the outside. I mean, Lewis would come in normal in the morning, he'd do his normal preparation, he'd train, he'd be the best in training the majority of the days. He used to train the way he played, so he must have been an absolute disaster for the defenders to compete against. And then he'd be away really quick, and he wouldn't be away quick because of a lack of professionalism or he didn't want to be there. He's just a family man. He never used to drink, he never used to really socialise with people. He used to spend his life with his wife and his children, and he had one child at the time, and his missus become pregnant further on. But if you had to describe Luis Suarez off the football pitch, it'd be a quiet man, up for a joke and a laugh, but just a family man, so pretty normal really, which probably surprises a few.
What was he like when he very first arrived, Steve? Because obviously, arriving from Ajax, coming into a massive club like Liverpool, some players can shrink a little bit. It can take them a while to get going. Did you instantly see him and go, yeah, we're onto something here?
It took about 10 minutes, JJ, because I think a lot of strikers that we used to sign did have respect for the likes of Jamie Carragher and other names around the squad. No, he had no respect for anyone in training in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, he'd be backing into them, he'd be leaving a bit on them, he'd have elbows up, and I'd be thinking, whoa, that's not normally what you'd see in training. You'd normally see a lot of respect, but Lewis would run through anyone and he'd have any defender up the wall at any given moment. So you knew pretty soon after 2 or 3 sessions, and to be fair, I think he scored on his debut, which helped him settle. But you knew straight away in days rather than weeks that he was going to be a top player for Liverpool straight away.
I actually saw him in an interview saying that it was you that convinced him to stay at Liverpool and turn down Arsenal in 2013. Is that the case? You convinced him?
I think there's an element of truth to it. It got a bit messy. I think Lewis had been promised certain things off certain people behind the scenes. You know, if there was no Champions League and a certain price was offered for him, he might have been allowed to speak to other people. So he felt let down. There was a bit of a fallout where Brendan made him train alone for a certain time. So I think I was just more of a negotiator in that situation. You know, I obviously wanted the best for Liverpool. I didn't like seeing a world-class footballer training alone. So it was more of a case of getting people in the room and getting stuff off the chest.
Мне нужно прерваться на пару минут. Технический перерыв.
training. A manager who used to phone me mum and dad to make sure that I went
Итак,
out.
продолжаем. Хотел сказать мордобитие, но нет, не мордобитие. Морды мы сегодня бить не будем. Мы сегодня занимаемся мирной деятельностью.
I probably could have went two ways with that. I probably could have felt sorry for myself and insecure and maybe folded at certain times, but I was aware of that treatment. But that used to drive me on to impress him, to get more warmth off him, to get more love off him, and to show him that I wanted to be one of his lieutenants, if you like. I'd be a liar if I said I haven't tapped into Rafa's tactics at certain times in terms of how he's set up and the approach, and you know, we could go on for ages exactly how he used to do it, but I've learned an awful lot on Rafa, certainly what he used to do in Europe and how he used to set us up.
Would you pick up the phone and give him a call?
I have done. I phoned him a couple of times at Newcastle to try and loan a few of his players, and as you can imagine, he blew me out. No,
did he call you Gerard while doing it?
When I say the relationship's totally fine. I could phone him up now for half an hour, 45 minutes, no problem. He's phoned me a couple of times as well. The relationship's totally fine and perfect. It's just at the time, it was very different from the Houllier relationship, so it was, you know, a little bit more cold, if you like. When Rafa came in 2004, there's no way in the world I could have played as a number 10 or with me back to goal. You know, so that's another reason. Like, Rafa helped me become someone who could play up a line and play with me back to goal and play with a number 9 and learned me all the tactics, where to run, when to run, and all the details behind it.
Так, через всю Калифорнию, через Орегон, Вашингтон.
But also the spine
Погнали.
Which was probably more secure than if I was playing there, because I used to wander off as a number 8. So in terms of being a solid team and tactically set up and people all tuned in, I think the 2009 was probably slightly better.
With Everton against your mob, which we should have won. So, I mean, it's something that you look back, isn't it? And I'm the same. And just think to miss out on winning a Premier League title or a Division 1 as it was back then. Every day, really.
Every day, yeah. And I think obviously because of the cruel moments that I experienced. I mean, I've never shied away from it, how big a moment it was and stuff. But every day, Gary, and as I say, a lot of demons were put to bed recently. Not all of them, but certainly felt a lot better when Liverpool got over the line recently, because I knew what, you know, going so close to 2004, the impact it had on the supporters in the city. You know, I look back every day, and I think I always will do forever and ever, because it is the one that eludes me in terms of being a player, and it would have completed the set.
Would you swap Istanbul for one?
No, I wouldn't, just because of the joy and the moments and the life-changing experience that gave me. I'd never swap it, but I'd give an awful lot of other things to have a Premier League medal, that's for sure.
Steve, this one might be difficult to answer then, with what we're just talking about, right? Do you feel maybe the club let you down a little bit in terms of your ambitions and their ambitions in maybe achieving that title during your career period at the club?
Listen, JJ, the club have never let me down. The club have been absolutely phenomenal with me since I've been 8 years of age. I mean, I grew up on a council estate and my parents done the best for me, but I've had support off that club since I've been 8 years of age, so I don't think so. If you look at it, I think,
in terms of like
I know exactly what you mean. I think we've had periods throughout the journey where we could have had better leadership, if you like, and you know, we could have been better recruitment-wise, and we could have done this. But that's obviously looking back and looking for certain excuses. There's been certain times where I could have been better myself. But if you, in terms of Liverpool, the club, what it's gave me, absolutely give me everything. I couldn't have asked for any more. But there's definitely been times where it could have had better leadership from the top. I mean, I think you know what I'm alluding to. But yeah.
While we're on managers, it would be remiss not to get your view of Jurgen Klopp. You worked with him, obviously, you're part of his staff for a while, but not as a player as such. But appreciation of him, what a job he's done, hasn't he?
I mean, I said a couple of weeks ago, I'd done an interview about getting the statue ready for him in the couple of weeks leading up to before they won it. I mean, he comes in and he obviously takes over a team that's languishing around 6th and 7th in the league, and there's a lot better teams at the time in Europe and domestically. And then to go on and he hit the post, if you like, in the Europa League in the final, and then he gets to the Champions League final and actually plays well in that final. Obviously the injury to Salah, it could have been another successful moment, but doesn't let the team feel sorry for themselves, and then they bounce back straight away and win the Champions League in outstanding fashion. And then to go and deliver the league on the back of that after the disappointment of losing out to Man City, I mean, this is a phenomenal job, and I think everyone across the board has to appreciate the job he's done, and he's absolutely turned that City round in terms of the fans and the feeling, and he's got the fans eating out of his hand, and rightly so, and hopefully long may continue, because I think there's more to come.
Great stuff. Right, we'll move on from managers to very personal things. Favourite goal that you scored? Blimey, you scored a few belters, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think I have to pick the West Ham FA Cup final, just for a couple of reasons. Obviously, I dreamed of playing in a FA Cup final, Gary. I watched a few that you played in yourself, going up against Liverpool. I used to have family parties on the street, and actually becoming a Liverpool player, the FA Cup was always my favourite one. So to score in 2006 an important goal at a time when I had nothing left to give, I was cramping up, I was tired. West Ham were better than us on the day.
I was there.
And you know yourself as players, sometimes you just hit one and it comes off right and it connects right, and you're a bit like, you surprise yourself if you like, and that was one of them goals and one of them moments for me.
I was at the other end and I remember seeing it.
It was unreal. It was unreal. I mean, to be honest with you, Stevie, it's my favourite goal you've ever scored as well, because we were going for top four with Spurs and Arsenal at the time, and it was when Lasagna Gate happened and we all got food poisoning on the last day of the season.
Oh yeah.
And those West Ham players, I've never seen celebrations like it the day they beat us to make sure we didn't get into the Champions League. I remember being sat in that dressing room and people are being, I mean, you can imagine what was going off in the toilets and in the sinks. It's just, everyone's got food poisoning and they're having a rave across the room just because they beat us. So when you smash that one in, I have never been so happy in my life when I saw their faces. I swear to God,
I mean,
definitely the best goal.
It was absolutely crazy day, and it was roasting hot on the day. I mean, you played in cup finals where it's just like the temperatures are unbelievable.
Were you down with cramp and stuff just before it, or you're hobbling around?
Hobbling around, and I think in a normal scenario at that time in the game where it was positioned, I'd normally just control the ball and try and play it out wide, and maybe if I could try and get in the box to get on the end of something, but I was that tired. I just thought, if this comes out of the box, I'm just going to hit one and try my luck. And then when you see the net go, it was like one of them moments where I actually shocked myself because of how I was feeling at the time.
What about the header in Istanbul?
Importance-wise, I always allude to that. I mean, I don't think it's obviously a fantastic goal on the eye, but important-wise, yes, it'd be up there for sure. But just because of how I felt in that game and it helping us to go on and win a trophy, I'd say probably on the eye, the West Ham one just pips it.
I can't get Lasagna Gate out of my head now, Jermaine. Do you think that was dodgy? Do you think that was dodgy? Do you think something up to no good with that, or do you think it was just one of those things?
It's never happened before, has it? And it's never happened since. It's one of
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Were you ill as well?
Yeah, everyone was. Yeah. Everyone was ill. Everyone. Yeah, we tried to get the game postponed, and they didn't even get it postponed in the end. There was a point in the game, like Michael Carrick was the worst out of all of us, right? And I think the only person that didn't get it was Edgar Davids. And Edgar, for some reason in this game, is having an absolute nightmare. He's having a beast. And Martin Yoles tried to take him off the pitch just because he's having a beast. And Carra has come flying over and gone, "Don't you dare! I'm going to be sick. I need to come off now." And he literally had to run straight down the tunnel. And Edgar's had to stay on the pitch. But it was a funny day.
Have you ever eaten lasagna since?
Well, my own lasagna, Gary. I trust myself.
Yeah, exactly. Play it safe, especially before a show. Right, Stevie, I think I've got to know the answer to this one. If it's not, I'll be shocked. Favourite game you've played in?
I've actually played in a couple along the way. You remember 2001 Alaves 5-4, the goal.
We did that game. We did that game live.
Actually, a funny story. Most of us didn't even know it was golden goal. So
no way.
Some of us are going back. Some of us are going back to line up and like thinking, there's still some extra time to play, and then it actually drops. Istanbul, obviously. Istanbul,
Yeah.
I mean, I think recently it's been voted as one of the best sporting things ever. I always have to go to that. I know people are sick of hearing about it, but that's the way it is.
They're not. Liverpool fans certainly aren't. Tell us what's going through your head during that. I mean, both in the first half and the second half, and when the comeback became possible.
Well, what about the weeks leading up to it, when you're seeing the teams in the papers and you're looking at, with all due respect to our squad and our 11, when it's faced up 11v11, the weeks leading up, I'm not sleeping the same. I'm thinking, oh, this could be tough, and they had top players all over the squad, so the build-up was tough, to try and remain confident and have belief and prepare for it, knowing what you were up against. And then obviously the game starts, and you know yourself, when you come up and you're an underdog, the plan's always to start well, stay in the game, be good defensively, and then goes Pete Tong after 3-4 minutes, and then at half time you're 3-0 down, but you could be 5 or 6, and that's probably one of the most difficult dressing rooms I've ever walked into as a captain, thinking, well, what am I going to say? What are we going to do? The fans are still with us, which was incredible.
What did you say?
Well, there was a bit of commotion in terms of, we had a few injuries that Rafa had to iron out and get the 11 sorted for the second half. We knew obviously Didier Man was coming on, which was a big lift for everyone, because I was surprised Didier didn't start with his experience, and I always felt like I played better with Didier Man because he'd always look after me and allow me and give me the license to go on. JJ, I'll tell you, as an attacking midfielder, it's better when you play with someone who holds the fort, if you like.
He was a master of the stalling foul, wasn't he?
Oh, he was the best. He used to just wait 1 second and then go over. And then Rafa said his piece, he'd done his changes and blah, blah, blah. And Rafa's message was, just try and get the first goal if we can. And I got the chance to speak towards the end of the meeting, which wasn't long, but it was more the case of just let's realise what the fans have done to get here. And the journey they've been on, the money they've put up, and they're still singing, they're still with us. Let's at least give them something to go home and sing about. It can't be one of these games where it becomes embarrassing. But it did actually feel a mismatch at half time. I have to generally admit that. I did feel.
You must have felt you were beaten, really, realistically.
Well, yes. I say. I mean, realistically, if I was really truthfully honest with how I was feeling at the time, I thought it was over.
When you got that first goal, Steve, then was it genuine belief, or was it a little bit like, well, let's just see what happens from here? Because sometimes when you're on the pitch and that goal goes in, you feel the other team just get a little bit like, oh, there's a little chink in their armour here.
I don't think it was belief in terms of like, right lads, I think we're going to go on and win this, because I'd be telling
gives you hope.
It
gives you hope.
It gives you a tiny bit of hope, a bit of belief. It gives people confidence. But what it does is it also gives you a bit of relief that you give the fans something. At least they've got a memory or something. And then it was just trying to rally everyone and try and keep the intensity up, because we started at a better intensity second half. We had a better shape about us, and we were getting a bit more joy in the final third. So you're thinking, well, come on then, let's see who can score the next goal. So it was more that type of feeling rather than belief that we were going to go and win.
I mean, it was an incredible game, and things started to go for you, and then you get back into it. I mean, I've watched you film the film of your life, which was terrific. Really enjoyed it, and you kind of encapsulated that emotion and what it meant, and it was just incredible. Difficult to describe, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, still to this day, it's like, how did it happen? I still have to pinch myself to believe. When you watch the game back, and even the second goal that Vladimir Smicer hits, I mean, Milan Boros pulls away. Dudek save.
That's the best save ever. One of the best saves ever in any game, anytime.
I mean, it's up there with the Gordon Banks one. I mean, it really is. It's one of those moments where you think, well, this could be our night. And then you get to penalties, and I was actually on the fifth penalty, so you can imagine the nerves and the tension and the anxiety. And then obviously when it's all done and dusted, I mean, I've done an interview at the side of the pitch, and I literally couldn't remember what I was saying. I was just so elated and on such a high. I mean, I've seen the interview back since, and I was like, I can't remember saying that. But yeah, superb night, fantastic night.
Yeah, it was. Did you have any friends or family or people that you knew that switched off at half time and went off?
Well, I've got a story for you that my own brother and dad had enough at half time.
No.
And they were thinking because it was in the middle of nowhere, the stadium. It was a bit of a trek and hard work getting there and stuff. So they were thinking, is it going to be the same after it? And it's not looking good here. And even they were contemplating going, but
they did stay there. Thank heavens.
Yeah, they did. Just about.
Wow.
I mean, that's something they would have had to live with for the rest of their lives. But I mean, the Liverpool fans in the second half. I mean, I think we got support off them off the night that they appreciated the journey and they accepted that, okay, this might be one step too far. At half-time, they must have thought, well, let's just stick with them because they've given us a great journey. So I think they were all shocked and surprised to come from the final whistle.
Hello there, it's Alistair Bruce Ball here on 5 Live Sport. We'll be back with the match of the day, lads, in a moment. Some great stories from Steven Gerrard in that podcast. I'm sitting at Craven Cottage, closing stages of the first half in the second Championship playoff semi-final second leg, and it is Fulham 1, Cardiff 1. 2 goals in the first 10 minutes of this game. Cardiff actually took the lead, having trailed 2-0 from the first leg. Curtis Nelson with a header from a corner, but then Fulham replying a minute after. Neeskens Kebano makes it 1-1 on the night, and that means that it is Fulham 3, Cardiff 1 on aggregate as the half-time whistle blows. So Cardiff need to find a couple of goals in the second half. The winner of this one will go on to face Brentford in the Championship playoff final on Tuesday at Wembley. And now it's time to rejoin Gary Lineker, Jermaine Jenas, and their special guest, Steven Gerrard.
Stephen, your football hero growing up?
I'm going to embarrass you a bit now, Gary. I had a few. With England, my first World Cup that I really watched properly at 10 years of age was 1990 World Cup. So obviously yourself being the goal scorer. Yeah, you were second.
That'll do.
No, I mean, yourself and Gazza. I mean, that team, I used to love that team. That was my England team, if you like, that I always go back to. From a Liverpool point of view, Johnny Barnes, you would have shared a dressing room with him. Growing up watching Barnes, Beardsley as well, but if I had to pick one, it'd be Johnny Barnes. And towards, just before I signed like schoolboy forms and apprenticeship forms at Liverpool, Robbie Fowler, I mean, from 19 to 23, was absolutely phenomenal. So they're probably my 4 heroes, my go-to men when I was in the street practicing when I was a kid.
Well, I'm truly flattered. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move straight to that. Go on, Jermaine.
Well, I was going to say, it's straight. There's not one centre midfielder in there, really, is there? There's not one kind of when I want to emulate kind of what he does.
Yeah, probably when I got towards 16, 17, I'd really studied the likes of, your Jamie Redknapp's and your Roy Keanes and your people in the league at the time. But in the street at 9, 10 years of age, I wanted to score goals. I wanted to take people on. I wanted to get crosses in, and
Well, Gazza was that, wasn't he? Gazza was a midfield player, and he was a different kind of player to yourself.
Yeah, he was.
But a different kind of player to anyone, a different kind of bloke to anyone. But what a player!
Even the years before, like I can mention Rush and I can mention Aldridge and stuff like that. It was more about the action and the highlights. I mean, on TV at the time, we would have only got the highlights, so I didn't really at the time understand centre midfield players and the position and stuff. It was probably more 100%. Towards 15, 16.
I'm the same. When people ask me, like, who did you kind of like love when you was a kid? Like John Barnes was like my hero in my house. He was like a god. Do you know what I mean? But as a centre midfield player, well, for starters, I played centre forward when I was a kid anyway, and then dropped back into midfield. So you don't always kind of base your heroes on how you want to play, do you? It's what lights you up.
The truth is, Jermaine, Stevie, the truth is that it's all about the goal scorers, lads. That's
why you get paid all the money.
This is true.
Well, this is true. Do nowadays, particularly, that's for sure. Here's one for you. The funniest moment. I mean, I'm sure you've had plenty. And probably some you can't tell us, but one that you can.
I'll tell you, but there's loads that I can't tell you. I mean, I've roomed with people like Jamie Carragher and Peter Crouch, and roomed with them all, and Wayne Rooney. The stuff that you obviously that goes on, and jokes, blah blah blah.
I heard a story about yourself going to a club in fancy dress, dressed. Literally, you had the prosthetics, and you were in a wheelchair and everything, dressed as an old man, and no one had a clue.
It wasn't a wheelchair. It wasn't a wheelchair. It was actually like a mobility scooter. So I'm thinking, what am I going to go as here? So the plan was, one of my friends had a mask. It was like a rubber mask of an older guy type thing with no air and blah blah blah. And it had a hole in the mouth where you could put a pipe in, and you could obviously put a flat cap on. So that was the idea. I went into a shop and bought some cheap clothes and dressed like a 70 to 80 year old man. And I went to hire the mobility scooter, and the guy was like, "Look, you can't hire it unless you've got a problem." And I was like, "Well, listen, my back, trust me." And I ended up getting the scooter on a 2-day release. So when I got dropped off in town, I had to drive into the bar on the mobility scooter, and I'm driving around the party, and everyone's in there just having a beer in fancy dress, and I'm just driving around them, and no one has got a clue who it is. So it worked an absolute treat. I actually won it on the night, which was good.
Oh, brilliant! I would think you did.
It was Crouchy that told you that, wasn't it? Was it Crouchy?
But it's not fancy.
It was Crouchy,
dress.
yeah. It was Crouchy that told me, yeah.
It was a belter, trust me. It was a good one.
Actually, saying that, when you said it was Crouchy, I think, was Pennant in that team as well? Because he told me about it as well. You had a couple of wrong-uns in that side, to be fair, didn't
you? We had some characters, let me tell you.
The best game you've ever watched, Stevie?
2. I watched one with you, if you remember. PSG, Barcelona, when we were up in the studio. Remember that one?
Of course, yeah, you were there. That was extraordinary, wasn't it? We went bonkers, didn't we? It's funny with a game like that, isn't it? How you can get so engrossed in it.
That's got to be one of them. But I think last year at Anfield, I was invited to go to the second leg against Barcelona, the 4-0 game. And if you talk about heartbeat and adrenaline, and I had to leave at 3-0 because I was so nervous it was going to go wrong and stuff. And Trent's corner and the crowd, the atmosphere. I think you might have been there for BT. Did you do that game?
Yeah, we were not only covering it, I was getting like dogs abuse from the Liverpool fans, because obviously the first leg when Barca won, there was a moment where they cut to us in the studio. They showed us after the game with the Messi goal and the free kick, and we got lots of stick from the Liverpool fans. Now I'm an ex-Barcelona player, so obviously I've got a lot of feeling towards the club. But the way it actually happened, and the reason that me and Rio went mad, was because we were sat in the studio, we're miles above there in the Nou Camp, and the free kick was given, and Messi needed one for 600, didn't he, or something? It was 600 goals for Barcelona. 600 goals for Barcelona. And the free kick was given, and I went, I fancy he'll score his 600 to him. Rio's gone, no chance. He says it's too far out. I said, I don't know, it's on the cusp. I think it's possible. And then, like 2 seconds later, he bent it at the top corner. I went, I told you we were going to. That's just one of the most amazing football things, you know, obviously.
Yeah. I think that's the way Messi gets you.
Yeah, it was just a magical moment that was so exciting.
Yeah, and I think even in that Anfield game, I mean, Messi was causing problems. And if you remember the one that Matip just nicks off his toe, and the one that he passes the side of the post, I mean, it was such an up and down game. I mean, 4-0 suggests it was so one-sided, but it wasn't, because Liverpool were under a lot of pressure as well at the time. But to watch, you know, as a guest, and obviously what needed to be done before the game, I mean, probably one of the best games I've watched, certainly since I've retired, for sure.
It was extraordinary. I also jumped up and was excited when Trent did what he did.
Yeah, but no one's seen that, Gary. Stop lying.
Well, I wasn't jumping up.
No one's seen Rio jumping up.
No, but we had who did we have in the studio? I think we had Michael Owen and Robbie Fowler, and the cameras were set on them, not us. No, we weren't jumping up and down. But I was absolutely. It was like, wow, what did we just see with what Trent did? Because it was like, what made him think of that?
I mean, the Champions League these days, I mean, that's what it gives you, isn't it? You know, them moments, and we talk about the PSG and Barcelona comeback a couple of years before. I mean, that's why we love it so much, because it gives you them moments where you're out of your seat.
Is that the ambition, Stephen, with Rangers, is to get them in the Champions League and have a, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Because you've got to win the league to do that in Scotland, obviously.
You have, and hopefully maybe one day as well, is getting the extra position in the league as well, with the points thing that you can sock up by doing well in the Europa League, which we're getting very close to. So hopefully, if it's not next season, the season before, it might take 2 teams in Scotland rather than 1.
Okay, right, here's one. I'm sure you've had plenty. We've probably mentioned 1 or 2 already. Craziest teammate?
Oof. I wouldn't class him as a teammate, but it was someone who I was an apprentice under, and I'm going to mention a name to you now, and you'll probably nod your head. Neil Razor Ruddock. I mean, this is someone who I used to clean his boots. I used to put his kit out. I used to be around him. I mean, you know, full of life, larger than life character. I mean, every single day you could have a story about Razor. But I remember something crazy that happened, and he comes out at half-time in the reserve game. He hadn't been picked by, I think it was Roy Evans or Ronnie Moran at the time, and he just whistled me on the pitch once, and the next minute he's just using the pitch as a toilet. He's just.
We've all done that, Stephen, I tell you.
Not number two. He shouts me and goes, I knew I should have had one at half-time, but I'm going to have to go. I just think he's doing that. I'm a 16-year-old kid, you know what I mean? Wow. Then I go to a function with him once, and he's drinking out of a shit. I mean, Razor's just one of them people. Great company,
Gaza,
lovely fella.
Exactly like that. Gaza, exactly the same.
Just
do anything
stories
for
left, right, and centre. Yeah. But the type of people you want to be around, because they just make your life better by being funny, and they don't.
Like those characters are just not there in the game anymore.
To be honest, JJ, everyone said that of time immemorial. They always go, the characters are not aligned, and then when you finish playing, people tell you about the characters. You don't realise. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked to Cesc Fabregas, and he was going. And we said who's the craziest teammate, and he came out with Gerard Piqué, and we're going, really? I wouldn't know that. He said, he's mad. He's full of.
Leave school, and I wasn't really a fan of school. I should have maybe focused a bit more at school, but going in to play football every day and looking up to the likes of Ruddock and Redknapp and Ince and Fowler, I mean, they were the best days of my life, my apprenticeship days.
It's funny you say that, Sticks. I remember being an apprentice at Forest, and we probably did the same as you. Like, we used to all have to stand in the tunnel as that kind of all the top players went out to play. And I remember Forest were playing Middlesbrough one day, and Gaza was on the bench. And at half-time, halfway down, there's like a long corridor at Forest, and the away team get dressed at the top, and halfway down there's a little tea room on the right-hand side, and there's always the same fella in there doing the teas, and we used to go in there as apprentice lads, freezing, like either doing ball boying or whatever. It was all freezing. I'd get a cup of tea. Gaza walks in one day, and I'll never forget it. He walks in, and he sits there with a cup of tea. He just lights a fag. He's on the bench at half-time. Starts smoking this fag, and I'm looking at him just like in awe of him, going, this is Gaza, like what's going on here? But like those moments, you just can't ever kind of like,
there's a lot of them.
No one gets to see those. Yeah, but they're so precious to someone who's like 15, 16.
You must be able to write a book on him, Gaza.
I could do
that. I mean, I hear all the
so
stories.
many,
I know you couldn't do that.
Well, I could. I mean, I've told hundreds of the stories. I'm trying to think of the fresh ones. We played at Man City, the old Main Road ground, and before the game, I always used to have a little hot bath, just to, like, for 2 minutes, sit down in the small bath. If there wasn't a small bath, if there was a big one, I'd stand in it just to stretch a little bit, because I was always stiff. 2 minutes max, hot water, get out, go and do my warm-up, come back. So we're playing at Main Road. So I'm doing my usual. They didn't have a small bath, they had just one big one. So first thing I do is walk in, start filling it up, get undressed, come back 10 minutes later, filled up, really hot, just stretch, 2 minutes. As I'm in there, Gaza walks in. He says, you're always having a bath late. You always have. Why do you do that? So I'm just like, just to loosen up, Gaza, just a little stretch. He said, I feel a bit stiff myself. I might try it. I went, yeah, all right. But yeah, I said, so I jumped out, right, and he jumps in. So I go, get my kit on, get trained, go out, do the warm up, 15-minute warm. I was used to warm up properly. Came back in 15 minutes late, got, messed about. Last thing I always did, walked in, gone have a pee, and I'm going to the bathroom. He is in the bath still, sat there, the water is up to there, it's boiling up, and his face is as red as a strawberry. And I said, Gaza, don't tell me you've been in there like that since I left. He went, it's great, man, it's great, feel great. So I went, oh, God. So we go out and play the game. I can't remember whether there were 2 or 3 down at half-time. Gaza is all over the place, and he's shouting at me, and he goes, I'm going, oh, for Christ's sake. So we get in at half-time, sit down, Venables goes, Gaza, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? He said, Lineker's fault. It's Lineker's fault. He told me to have a bath, didn't he, before the game? I'm all giddy. I'm all dizzy, like. Honestly, it's like, what? It's funny, he's been calling me a bit lately, and we were talking about that, and he remembered it well, and he said, I still blame you. I went, yeah, cheers. Brilliant. Yeah, he's unbelievable. Right, let's finish with favourite international moment, which, given the nature of the team that England had for such a period, so many great players, favourite internationals probably not enough good moments.
Definitely not enough. I see a lot of interviews about this. I see a lot recently as well, and I'm sure JJ has been asked this question numerous times. Why didn't we, as a group, do better? And we should have. I think we have to take a lot of responsibility for that. I think my best moment would have to go back to 2001, beating Germany away 5-1, because that is the go-to game, and the memory for me where probably that team performed at the level maybe it should have. But I look back with England with a lot of regret, Gary, in terms of I see the picture of that team and the squad, and training with the likes of JJ as a group. We had some fantastic groups of players over the years, and I think we come close at times in the penalty shootouts and could have maybe got a little bit further, which people might have given us a bit more respect for, but there's no getting away from it. We underperformed.
I remember a game we played against Argentina in Geneva. It was a friendly game, and I think you set up the winner for Michael. I think we beat him 3-2 in the last minute or something.
3-2, yeah.
And I remember being in the shower with you afterwards, and even though we won the game and it was such a great game, you were a little bit annoyed. And I remember you talking to me about with England, you get moved around a lot because of your physical attributes that you've had as a player. It almost not made it worse for you, but it didn't allow you. Say Lampard, for example, because he was like an attacking midfield player and he wasn't known, I suppose, as dynamic as you. You'd never put Lamps at right back, would you? Basically.
No, but I have seen Paul Scholes get played out of position. I've seen you get played out of position. I mean, in that game that you're talking about, I think I had the stage at right back.
You played at right back in the end. That's my point. That's why we had the conversation, because you were a bit annoyed with it.
I remember thinking to myself, if Messi comes over here, my back's going in, I'm getting off the pitch. But yeah, I think because of my versatility, I think it did go against me at certain times.
That's what I mean, yeah.
For me, looking back, I think we just needed that manager that was bigger than all the individual players.
You needed a manager. It's probably easier for me to say. You needed a manager.
I'll say it. I'll say it.
Oh, good. Say it.
Because I feel passionate about it. And look, before any headlines come, we are responsible for it, and I am responsible for the part I played in. I'm not shying away from it, but I look at managers now, and there was managers available at the time. I hear Benitez or blah blah blah. Maybe he didn't want to be an international manager at the time, okay. But I look at managers now that are bigger than the team. Your Klopps and your Mourinhos and your Guardiolas and blah blah blah. And I think someone like that who was above the golden generation, if you like, and prepared to make the tough decisions tactically, technically, formation-wise, and decision-making would have got more out of that group, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, my point was going to be pretty much that. It seemed they were so stuck, particularly Sven, was so stuck in his way of playing. And they used to really irritate me when they used to say, yeah, but the trouble is Lampard and Gerrard can't play together. In a 4-4-2, you could argue that, but why? If you've got those kind of players and Scholes as well, and change the system.
I also think, listen, Scholesy and Frank are phenomenal footballers. There's no getting away from it, and maybe at times me and Frank didn't deliver in it, so we deserve that criticism. Of course we do, but there was times I'd go into England get-togethers sometimes, and I weren't in the best form myself, or I'd be carrying an injury, if you like, and blah blah blah. But I'd still play. Now, of course, I wanted to play, and I think that's right because my ego would want me to play, and I wouldn't want to lose my place, and blah blah blah. But I think what Gareth's done in this day and age is, if you're not in form, it doesn't matter whether you're Lampard, Scholes, Lineker, Jenas, blah blah blah. Someone else is in form. They're going to do a better job for this game at the time, and he's got, he's put himself above them decisions, and I think that's the reason why England are getting success.
Yeah, because on the flip side to that, Stevie, there was so many times, I think, for people like myself, Michael Carrick, maybe Scotty Parker as well on the fringe of it at times, and we had the feeling that it didn't matter what it did. So in turn, we used to kind of switch off to an extent. We shouldn't have. That's where it's our fault.
Yeah, no, listen, I can understand that, and also when you're away for 6 weeks or 10 days, if you know what the team's going to be and certain players are going to play, I totally feel that frustration, of course I do. And there was times when I'd go into England get-togethers and be in unbelievable form, and I'd go and play on the left, but I'd just be absolutely fantastic as an 8 or a 10. So I think everyone has the frustrations and blah, 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 but I just think that is where the manager comes in, is getting the best out of individuals and the group in the right formation that suits the personnel. And if it means a Gerrard on the bench for a game, I wouldn't like it at the time, but I'd get over it. Scholes wouldn't like it at the time, but he'd get on with it. You know, what is the best formation and system for the group? But you need a figurehead to go and deliver that.
It's a shame. It seemed like a bit of a waste, that golden generation. It never quite happened. Steve, thanks so much for your top 10.
My pleasure.
It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. Just a couple of words before we go on how you enjoyed. We worked together a bit with BT, obviously, with punditry and stuff. How's the management side of it? You enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it, Gary. There's obviously a lot of things to learn and improve on. I'm loving, obviously, the daily routine of being around the football pitch and the dressing room and trying to get the most out of the players and stuff. I'm at a fantastic club that is giving me support. I'm really enjoying being at Rangers. I feel like we've made a lot of progress, but you know, it's a tough challenge here. We've still got to go some more. We've still got to keep making the right additions to try and close the gap even more. But in terms of the journey, I'm loving every minute of it.
Making progress, you're closing the gap.
Yeah, I think we have made progress. We've closed the gap. We've proved that we can beat Celtic now. You know, I think they were you know, in fear of them when I first came in because they'd had a couple of setbacks against them. But the challenge now is, can we go the distance? You know, we've proved in 1v1 games we can match them and beat them. We've proved we can go on runs in Europe and compete against Feyenoord and Porto and them type of teams. But what we haven't yet to prove is getting over the line to get our first trophy and also go the distance for longer in the league. So the challenge is making the 11 better, making the squad better, prepared to try and go the distance.
I was watching your film, Stephen, and what I found truly fascinating was how much it meant to you, what happened with you during your career at Liverpool. With management, it's even more of an onus on you. Can you still enjoy it, or does it matter too much at times, do you think?
I think it's very similar to as a player in terms of the emotional side and the feeling. I mean, you will know after a win it feels unbelievable. You feel good about yourself for a few days. You're fantastic around the house and blah blah blah. But the setbacks and the bumps in the road and the defeats are still just as painful. But when I came out and I stopped playing for a few years, or I went over to America and stuff, I really missed that being involved in the pressure situations and having a routine and something to compete for on the weekends. I did miss coming out of Liverpool and having that. And this replaces a lot of it, and I am enjoying that side of it. But it is different to being a player because you're part of the team. You know, you have a job within that team and stuff, and it can be a little bit more lonely at times and a little bit more difficult at times as a manager. But I knew that coming into it, and it's something you've got to deal with at the time.
Have you made certain decisions, Stevie, where, I mean, because obviously you're a brand new manager, so you go into, but where, I don't know, whether it's the press conference afterwards, the way that you've handled the half-time team talk, where you kind of would go, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, I need to do it this way next time, like whether it's out in players and so on and so forth, are you like constantly learning every day?
Yes, for sure. I've come away from press conferences and thought I was probably a little bit too harsh there, or I maybe could have been a little bit more harsh, maybe. I've, you know, come away from team talks and thought I haven't hit the right message there, I've said the wrong thing, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that. But with all due respect, JJ, I think I'll still be making them mistakes if I'm still involved in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. I think it is one of them games where you don't stop learning. I'm sure the best managers out there in the world who I'd strive and love to be as good as one day, I'm sure they're still making mistakes. So I don't think it's a case of anyone being perfect in this role.
No one's perfect in any role. It's part of life, isn't it, really, Stephen? Your life has been absolutely brilliant so far. Thanks for sharing some of it with us, and wish you all the best for whenever football does return. And Jermaine, thank you as well. That's it for this episode of Match of the Day Top 10 on BBC Sounds. We'll be back next week.
on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. This is Erica Fisher. The government has confirmed that it's to impose a 14-day quarantine for passengers arriving from Luxembourg because of a rise in coronavirus cases there. The new restrictions begin at midnight
Думаю, нужно немного попетлять
для
того, чтобы открыть. Я просто не хочу проезжать через эти города. И чтобы у меня за плечами оставались неоткрытые кадровые агентства и дилеры. Я думаю, небольшая задержка, она ни к чему меня не обязывает.
But I did look at the report that you're referring to, and it's quite clear that England in particular does seem to have had quite a lot of deaths, and it's necessary to get greater understanding of what went on and why.
All four of the UK's chief medical officers have agreed that anyone who tests positive for COVID-19 or shows symptoms must self-isolate for at least 10 days. Until now, the rule was 7 days. The Health Secretary has announced that all GP consultations should be carried out by telephone or video call from now on, unless there's a compelling clinical reason. During a speech to the Royal College of Physicians, Matt Hancock said that most doctors' appointments were successfully delivered remotely during lockdown. He said the new system would make life easier for everyone.
We shouldn't patronise older people by saying they don't do tech. The feedback from this transformation has been hugely positive and especially valued by doctors in rural areas who say how it could save long travel times, both for doctors and patients.
More than 200 suspected migrants have crossed the Channel to the UK by boat, a record figure for a single day. They arrived in 20 boats. Simon Jones reports.
Over a 12-hour period, the Border Force intercepted a record number of people and boats. 202 migrants in total, the vast majority of them men. Some crossed the busiest shipping lane in the world in kayaks. More than 1,000 people have reached the UK this month alone. The Immigration Compliance Minister, Chris Philp, described the figure as unacceptably high. He has been trying to convince the French authorities to turn the boats back at sea to act as a deterrent.
Donald Trump has raised the prospect of delaying November's presidential election, claiming it will be inaccurate because of postal votes. The date of the election can only be postponed with bipartisan support, which Mr. Trump doesn't have. England's cricketers have beaten Ireland in their one-day international in Southampton. Set a target of 172 all-out, the hosts won by 6 wickets, giving them a 1-0 lead in the 3-match series. BBC News, it's 9
BBC 5 Live.
Colin Murray and Dotun Adebayo.
Dotun Adebayo, 1am to 5am, Monday to Friday, is a reason to never sleep. He does phone-ins and big subjects on world football. He's got his virtual jukebox, but more importantly, he can take any subject, big or small, and make it engaging and interesting. He's the boss, and he keeps me up several times a week.
Colin Murray and Dotun Adebayo. Night Times on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Is the British Grand Prix. It's Silverstone, the sun's out. The great British sporting summer has finally arrived. Well, sort of. I'm Jenny Gow and this is 5 Live Formula One. Well, plenty to pack in over the next hour as we look ahead to the British Grand Prix, the first of another triple header. We ask whether Mercedes have produced the best ever Formula One car. Will Ferrari's restructuring make any difference? And can a new race engineer for Alex Albon change his fortunes at Red Bull? All that to come, and I'll introduce all our guests in just a moment. But first, a goal update from Craven Cottage even, with Alistair Bruce Ball.
Well, Cardiff City fans have hope again because their team has scored early in the second half here. This is the Championship playoff semi-final second leg. Cardiff now lead 2-1 on the night. They trail 3-2 on aggregate, having lost the first leg at home 2-0. But at the moment now, as things stand, they only need one more goal and the tie will be level on aggregate. The winner tonight will face Brentford and they will play for a place in the Premier League at Wembley on Tuesday night. Fulham 1, Cardiff 2 on the night. Fulham still leading on aggregate by 3-2, and there is well over half an hour to play.
Thank you very much. We will keep you updated with the football as we go through the evening over the next half an hour. Now, as always, I have my esteemed panel ready to rock and roll for you. We have Jack Nicholls, Jolyon Palmer and Andrew Benson. And Jack, the first thing I want to know from you, you had a free weekend last week. You were desperately trying to find some motorsport. Did you find any?
No, I decided not to do motorsport. I decided maybe that I needed to have a bit of a life. So me having a bit of a life meant going to see my parents on a Norfolk beach, because obviously I haven't seen them since the start of lockdown. But realistically, I don't see them more often than every 4 months anyway. So it doesn't. Lockdown really hasn't made a huge difference to how often I see my parents. So I think they were quite pleased I bothered to show up.
Oh, that's nice. Shame you didn't get any motorsport in, though. There we go. Jolyon, did you find anything more interesting to do than go to a beach?
What, more interesting than North Norfolk? It's lovely.
I went to a Devon beach. I was on the I was trying to get as far away from Nicholls as I could. So I went to the other side of the country, and it worked.
Oh, frightening images. I dread to think where Andrew Benson went. Had a COVID test anytime recently, Andrew Benson?
I had one on Monday, which I was required to have to come to Silverstone, which is not where I am right now. I'm in a not very glamorous hotel in Milton Keynes, but I was at Silverstone today. And an odd experience it was, I can tell you. It was like resplendent in the bright summer sunshine, 24 degrees today, 34 tomorrow apparently, and hardly a soul in sight. We're normally a big festival atmosphere, but it's like a test day.
So strange, isn't it? Going to Silverstone, no fans there. Kind of, do you feel like it does lose a little bit of the personality?
It's still Silverstone, isn't it? It's still one of the world's greatest racetracks, and it still should be a great race weekend, but obviously not as great as normal. All the drivers have been talking about how weird it's going to be. The British drivers, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Lando Norris, this is the highlight of the year for them, being cheered to the rafters, met at the entrance to the paddock. None of that atmosphere will be there. But to go back to your original question about coronavirus tests, Jenny, I certainly wouldn't recommend it if you don't need it.
Oh, right, OK. How many did you have, 4 or a 2?
I had a 1, including sweeps, and then a 2, Ooh. If you see what I mean.
I'm administering mine myself, which is not easy. You have to just.
I don't know how you can, Jack. Yeah.
Oh, well, I know, but you just have to keep going up your nose till anyway. But you hit your brain, and for me, that's an awful long way till you get to my brain.
Does it echo up there?
Yeah, exactly. I think when Formula One was coming back, when you think about the football and you think about the fake crowd noises or the no crowd noise, like on 5 Live, you can either listen on 5 Live and get pretend crowd noise, or listen on Sports Extra and get no crowd noise. I thought, well, it's not really going to matter with Formula One because they've got noisy engines. You never hear the crowd. And then it's only really Silverstone, maybe Monza, that you actually think, you know what? If Hamilton wins on Sunday and there's no cheers or, big hoo-ha and crowd surfing and all that stuff he usually does, then it is actually going to be a little bit weird.
Going to be very strange, I think, for all involved, and obviously Andrew is at Silverstone this weekend, and we will keep checking in with how things are. But I suppose the first place we need to start with is the fact that this evening we have breaking news that's come to us within the last hour. Racing Point's Sergio Perez will not take part in this weekend's Grand Prix after testing positive for COVID-19. The team have told us about his health. They said Sergio's physically well and in good spirits, but he will continue to self-isolate under the guidelines of the relevant public health authorities, with safety the ultimate priority for the team and the sport. So, Andrew Benson, do we know any more than this?
Oh, well, it's the first driver coronavirus test since the season started at the beginning of this month. I suppose it was inevitable, and certainly Formula 1 have been doing their level best to emphasise that they were expecting people to test positive sooner or later because, you know, we are in a global pandemic after all. It's still obviously quite a shock because they've been trying so hard to have all these mitigation procedures in place, bubbles and sub-bubbles and track and trace system. Of course, they're emphasising how well that's worked. And of course, the next question is who's going to replace him? Now, Racing Point can call on the Mercedes race reserve driver for the weekend, which this weekend is Esteban Gutierrez. They also have Stoffel van Dorn, but he's going to be racing in Formula E very soon, as Jack knows, so he's not available. But I think the most likely candidate is Nico Hülkenberg, who used to drive for the team a few years ago before he spent the last 3 years of his career at Renault, so he's got very recent Formula 1 experience, which Gutierrez doesn't. Frankly, he's probably a bit better than Gutierrez too, and the team know him because he was actually Perez's teammate for 3 years, from 2014 to 2016. So it's not, I don't think anything is done or agreed yet, but I think Hülkenberg's looking like the favourite at the moment.
Jolien.
It's amazing. I know Formula 1 said they were expecting this, but we're in round 4 and one of the 20 drivers has got it, and I do find it very surprising. It's come quick. When you think of all the other, the football, for example, there was Mariano, the Real Madrid striker, tested positive, but there's thousands of footballers that have been playing, thousands, and I know there's been the odd positive case, but there's only 20 Formula 1 drivers. That's less than one club's worth of footballers.
Yeah.
And we're in round 4, and we've already got one positive case from a guy that should be challenging for a podium. I mean, it is quite big news, that.
Andrew, and if you look at it, I mean, the drivers are meant to be in bubbles when they're on a race weekend. We heard previously that, you know, the likes of Charles Leclerc, for example, flew home, as did Valtteri Bottas. Bottas didn't do anything wrong, but Leclerc did get sort of told off because he went outside of his bubble. Do we know any reason of how or why Perez has come back with a positive test, and who else may be affected because of it?
Well, he has his immediate sub-bubble within the team, all of whom have had to self-isolate, and obviously they're going to be tested to see how they work, how they are as per the track and trace system, which obviously all countries should have established by now to properly try and control coronavirus's spread. I mean, the bottom line is he's just done 3 races in 2 different countries, flown an aeroplane back to wherever he went to before Silverstone, and then probably came to Silverstone on another aeroplane. I don't know how many aeroplanes were involved. And, you know, we have to accept, Jolien's absolutely right, of course, it is shock and big news, but at the same time, we have to remember this is an incredibly serious situation. Anyone can get coronavirus at any time. It's out there. That's the reality of the world at the moment.
And I think that it's quite important almost that this has happened early because, like you say, Jenny, you look at Charles Leclerc, who got in trouble for going out with his mates when he went home in Monaco, and you look at Valtteri Bottas, who went home in between the 2 Austria races and then I believe again after Austria before Hungary, and maybe this will make the drivers sort of take it a bit seriously, because I think there was a bit of a feeling within the paddock that we are trapped here in Austria for a week, or in Hungary, we can't leave our hotel, blah, 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 blah. But if you've got a private jet, you can pop home back to Monaco for
the obvious implications health-wise. Perez is gonna miss presumably the next Grand Prix as well.
Yeah.
By the time he's now got to isolate for the due time, 10 days. So he's going to miss 2 Grand Prix. And do you remember at the start of the year we said with Mercedes having the car they've got, Hamilton driving the way he does, what will stop him winning the title? And literally the most obvious answer was a positive corona test, which seemed unlikely, but one of the 20 drivers has got it now, and it can absolutely derail someone's season. And Perez has a great car, can't use it this weekend.
And if you look at Bottas, Hamilton's main title rival, as one of the drivers who's been going to and from, you wonder whether that's going to change his attitude towards that, because popping home and he's lost the title, basically.
Do you think that F1 drivers, I should probably angle this to Jolyon, seeing as he has been one, think of themselves as maybe most sports people would? They're slightly above the rules. It won't happen to them. I'm okay because, you know, I am living a privileged life.
Generally, when you look at all the measures that are being done, you'd say the F1 drivers certainly are keeping themselves more isolated than everyone else, in terms of the rest of the team are all hanging around together. They're all not quite having the same sort of isolated privileges as some of the drivers are having, where they're not we're not even having proper podiums at the moment, and I think only the last race we actually managed to have a man give the trophies rather than a robot, whereas the mechanics are expected to just carry on working. And there is a little bit of a different way the drivers are and the rest of the team are, which is obviously ridiculous in this situation when it's coronavirus, which can come to anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a Formula 1 driver paid millions or a mechanic that is paid far less, and they're still at the same risk. So there is a little bit of that potentially. And the drivers, don't forget also, they're young. They're young, and the actual fundamentals of the health risk, they're probably not the major concern. For Sergio Perez, there's probably maybe, you know, his extended family and the rest of the concerns we all have with picking it up. But as a young guy around 30, is he particularly worried for his own health? Probably not so much, but it's more about the championship, bringing it in and the rest of it.
Yeah, just on the sort of team, we know that other team members who were in that immediate bubble have gone to be tested, still awaiting the test results. I mean, yes, okay, Sergio Perez can be replaced, but how easy is it to replace other members of a team when it comes to, you know, race engineer, performance engineer, anyone who would have been in that bubble? Presumably that's more problematic than a driver almost.
No, I think the driver is the biggest problem. There's, apart from finding someone talented enough to do the job, there's obvious other changes, like getting them up to speed with how your car works, having a seat fit, getting the pedals in, introducing them to everyone in the team who, depending on who you are, you might not have a clue who anyone is and be new to it. You might not have ever driven a Formula 1 car. Depends who will categorically be replacing Perez. So the driver's definitely the hardest one to replace, and to be honest, there are 20 in the world. There will be someone else this weekend that will make it 21 for the year, but they are valuable commodity. The engineers are similar because they're all top of their game. Formula 1 engineers are some of the brightest minds out there, but a Formula 1 team has a lot of people back in the factory as well, and they probably can replace some factory staff to get out to the track and the factory and fill those roles.
The factory for Racing Point is a 30-second walk from Silverstone as well. I think, you know, if this were Ferrari, maybe you'd be in a slightly different situation, or a team coming from, there isn't a Spanish team, but a team coming from Spain or something, you could end up in a bit of trouble. But the Racing Point factory is at Silverstone, so Andrew Benson is right now.
Yeah. But you also remember Lewis Hamilton had a different race engineer last year in Japan when Pete Bonington, his race engineer of many years, was away. He had Marcus Dudley, his junior engineer, step in, won the Grand Prix. So it's inconvenient, definitely, but they can get over it.
Okay. Right, we will talk more F1 in just a moment, but let's go back to Craven Cottage at Alistair Bruce Paul.
20 minutes to go in the tie. Drinks break at the moment. I can see the two managers, Cardiff's Neil Harris and Fulham's Scott Parker, really trying to rally the troops. At the moment, Cardiff lead 2-1. Lee Tomlin scored early in the second half. They are a goal away from levelling this tie on aggregate. Fulham won the first leg 2-0 at Cardiff, but they trailed 2-1 tonight. Cardiff could very easily have equalised after they scored early in the second half. Josh Murphy with a weak header. He should have done better with that. Danny Ward was inches away from connecting with a Leandro Bakuna cross, but they have also got to be careful they don't get caught out at the other end. Abubakar Kamara has hit the post. In fact, a fantastic save by the Cardiff keeper Alex Smith. He's tipped it onto the post. 20 minutes to play, and this is right in the balance. Winners make the final against Brentford on Tuesday. Cardiff lead 2-1 on the night, but Fulham lead 3-2 on aggregate.
Cool, tense stuff. Thank you very much, Alistair. Right, more F1. Before we talk about on-track action this weekend, one of the main talking points since the race in Hungary 2 weeks ago was F1's approach to the anti-racism message. In the moments leading up to the race at the Hungaroring, the demonstration looked poorly organised, there was no real plan, drivers didn't really have time to allow them to do whatever they wanted to do to mark their campaign against racism. And this is what Lewis Hamilton had to say.
At the last race, I said that I was going to speak to the heads of the sport and try to engage with them and see how we can move forwards more united and better. So I spent time talking to Jean, spent time speaking to Chase and Ross. Had really great conversations with them to understand what they're planning and what they want to do moving forwards, and just make sure they know that we're all in the same team here. And things like giving us that little bit extra time, for example, at the beginning of before the race, so that we can really show how united we are as a sport, because other sports have done a better job at consistently doing that. So they've been really open-minded, and I do think that it needs to continue through the year. And so I believe at the moment that's what we're going to continue to do. I think there's been some pushback from some teams maybe, but again, it's a work in progress to get us all together, and I think it's going in the right direction.
Well, as he says, the FIA and F1 have come together to say that there will be a specific time for the anti-racism protest to take place ahead of this weekend's race. Lewis Hamilton says there his hope is that by the end of the season everybody will choose to take a knee. Andrew Benson, that seems quite hard to believe when having listened to so many of the drivers today.
Well, I asked them all the question, Jenny, didn't I, basically? The people who didn't take a knee the first time, obviously it was quite hard for the second two races to see who was and wasn't, because not everyone was there, and it was a bit chaotic, as Hamilton was saying. But every single one of them who hasn't taken a knee so far basically made it very clear that they weren't going to take a knee. Both Hamilton and Grosjean have said that they hope that they would. What they do, and so they're not united on that front, but what they are definitely united on is they're all anti-racism. And interestingly, so a lot of the people like Max Verstappen, who won't take a knee, was saying that he thinks it's right that it continues through the rest of the year, which is not set in stone yet, but that's certainly what the drivers are pushing for, and it looks like that's going to be the way they go forward with this designated time before the start of the race.
Yeah, Jack, I found it quite interesting listening to Lewis Hamilton saying that actually he and Romain Grosjean, who's one of the heads of the GPDA, which is the Drivers Association, had a 45-minute conversation after the last race, to discuss this, and that's what Hamilton wants to do. He wants to educate the rest of the drivers.
Yeah, I didn't have that long a conversation with my parents in Norfolk, but I think it's really impressive that these conversations are happening, because Grosjean initially said said today that he was basically backing the drivers who didn't want to take the knee, because Vettel was backing the drivers who did, fundamentally. And it's difficult now for the drivers that haven't taken the knee, I think, to now take the knee, just within themselves personally, because they've kind of made their stance, and then I think to turn around and be like, now I will take the knee now, actually it is a realistic or an important thing for me to do, is a difficult position for them to put themselves in. So I think by not doing it initially, they're kind of boxed themselves into a corner, whether they kind of want to or don't want to. They're in that position of, well, they didn't, so why are they changing their mind. But I think the important thing is all of this, as Grosjean has illustrated today, is to be able to change your mind. I think that's kind of the fundamentals of a lot of these movements, is the ability to change your mind. So I don't think anyone would criticize any of these drivers if they did end up taking the knee.
Andrew.
So just a bit of background on that Grosjean situation. People may have noticed that the reason they had this conversation was that after the last race in Hungary, Hamilton actually pointed the finger at Grosjean and said he was one of the drivers who hadn't wanted to continue these demonstrations after the first race. Now, I heard in the gap between these two races that wasn't actually accurate, that there'd been a misunderstanding in the drivers' briefing that they were talking about. And Grosjean was saying today that what had happened was that he felt it was his responsibility to put across the point of view of the 7 or 8 drivers who had felt that the process should discontinue, because Vettel, who's the
У меня родился отличный план. Я думаю, и я надеюсь, я его успешно реализую. Там, конечно, тупик, но чтобы заехать туда с грузом, да при этом еще и открыть... и заправлюсь заодно и починюсь. А обратно уже буду так выезжать. Так, ну мне главное... Окей. Что ж, попробуем.
There's a little bit behind the scenes of, you know, people briefing against some other people and then other people briefing against other people, and people saying that some of the drivers are not taking a knee because Hamilton is taking a knee, because they didn't like the way that he sort of called them out in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's death in America in May for not immediately coming out and being anti-racist. So there is definitely some tension behind the scenes, but it does feel like they are moving towards a position where they can all at least be united in a sort of united in a disunited front against racism, if you see what I mean.
Jolyon, just thinking about your time as a driver in Formula One, was there ever a time when all of the drivers kind of got together like this and had conversations and chatted?
Not about things outside of Formula One and things to improve the sport. Not about outside things, I don't think. In the Grand Prix weekend, you get a couple of moments where all the drivers are together. And with the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, they do lead some sort of discussions amongst the drivers. And yeah, sometimes you get these. But they were about, when I was in it, Halo was coming in, and huge discussions about that for years. And a lot of other safety aspects for karters and this and that. And it's all about the sport, whereas this is clearly something that's way bigger than the sport. Black Lives Matter has been a huge feature of the year now, really, across all sports and life. And so, to be honest, it's really new territory for a lot of them as well, to try and coordinate. I'm surprised they can't all coordinate a better united message. But it is completely new territory. And the likes of Romain Grosjean trying to... You've got a real battle of egos in there, which I think is a bit of a factor as well. You've got Lewis Hamilton, who's obviously absolutely forthright from day zero about this and really about what all the rest of the drivers should be doing. And you've got some of the younger guys with their own big egos who I don't think anyone here in the sport really doesn't believe in the Black Lives Matter cause, but I don't think they want to be pushed around by Lewis Hamilton, which seems to be where the divide largely comes from, and another couple of issues as well for other individuals.
Okay, we'll talk more about the power of Hamilton in just a moment, but let's go back to a nail-biter. Fulham versus Cardiff at Craven Cottage. What's happened, Alistair?
10 minutes left in the game. Chances coming thick and fast at either end. Cardiff lead 2-1 on the night. Fulham lead 3-2 on aggregate. Were it not for their keeper Marek Rodak, we would be level on aggregate. A brilliant flying save to deny Will Vokes on the volley. Fulham getting chances on the counter-attack. It's anyone's game. 10 minutes to go. Cardiff leading 2-1 on the night. Winners play Brentford at Wembley on Tuesday, and Fulham still hold that slender lead on aggregate by 3-2.
Thanks very much. 28 minutes past 9. And Jack Nicholls, Jolyon Palmer, Andrew Benson are here for 5 Live Formula One. And Jack, I just wanted to talk about Lewis Hamilton and how big he is now as a personality, as a sportsman. I mean, he's stepping into, it feels like, very new territory.
I think certainly in Formula One. Maybe in... It feels a bit exaggerated sometimes, because Formula One, despite being a big sport, sort of still feels like a niche sport at times. But Hamilton transcends it in such a way that is quite remarkable. And I think the recent Black Lives Matter stuff has kind of accentuated that, and the fact that he is now, and also his vegan stuff from a few years ago, opening vegan restaurants and that sort of thing. He really uses his platform in a way that we've not seen before. And even, I think, when we've seen drivers be extroverted before, they've not necessarily done it in the same way as Hamilton. You think of, Michael Schumacher was a kind of relatively private person. Sebastian Vettel, a very private person. All these multiple world champions were generally quite private with the media and that sort of thing. So I think Hamilton, even when he came onto the scene in 2007, 2008, he's dating Nicole Scherzinger, all of that kind of stuff right from the start has been in the public domain. And so I think that's what's helped him build this huge profile that he has now.
Andrew, when it comes to, the big personalities of Formula One, as Jack was just saying there, you've got your Schumachers and Vettels quite introverted, but then if you go back, you've got your Sennas and your Hunts who are a bit more extrovert. But is Lewis going into uncharted territories now when it comes to Formula One and just how influential he is both in and outside the sport?
I'm not sure about uncharted territories. If you look back through Formula One history, there have been a handful of drivers whose status has become so grand and great that there was no questioning them, basically, on whatever the topic might have been. So you go back to the 50s, it was Fangio. He was an understated personality, but he was, everybody, all the drivers looked up to him. Go back to the 60s and early 70s with Jackie Stewart. Think of the safety campaign that he mounted pretty much single-handedly, getting Formula One to begin to think about drivers' safety. And then in the 80s and 90s, Senna took on a status that I think possibly not even Hamilton has got to yet, in terms of, he was regarded as a kind of demigod by lots of people, not just
Didn't
in
Senna get a
Brazil.
race ban in 1989?
I'm not sure he got a race ban. He got his license suspended at one point, but in terms
I
of his
can't see that happening to Hamilton.
Well, no, maybe not, but that doesn't necessarily mean that his status wasn't as bigger than Senna's. It might just mean that we're in a different place in the world right now where that sort of thing wouldn't happen. Well, you got to remember back to that period you're talking about, Joe. Jean-Marie Balestre was the very controversial president of the governing body. He was French, and he was very much aligned with Alain Prost, who was the arch enemy of Ayrton Senna. So there was a lot of that political stuff going on in the background with that license dispute that we're talking about. But I think it would be, I'm not saying that Hamilton's a bit far behind Senna, if he's behind him at all. He's elevated himself to that sort of status. But in some ways, it's a different kind of status, in the sense that Senna kept all his extracurricular, helping disadvantaged children in Brazil, in the favelas, for example, after he died. His gravitas came all from his status as a racing driver on track, and his sort of accepted superiority of everybody else. Hamilton appears to be superior to everyone else too, but he's taking stands on issues outside the sport almost more than he is on issues inside the sport. So it's different in that sense very much.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, why it's uncharted territory, because all those people you talk about were huge within Formula One, and were very much, everyone would listen if they said something Formula One related. But with Hamilton, he can say anything related, and it has an absolutely ginormous impact around the world. And, America, for example, is a great
point of that. You know, Hamilton goes to New York Fashion Week and is a big deal. He goes on Ellen DeGeneres' show and is a big deal. He goes on Trevor Noah's show and is a big deal. All of these huge American things that transcend the little European garagista sport that ultimately we're in. And I think that's where it is uncharted territory for any driver we've had in the past. I agree with you about Senna being a ginormous demigod was the appropriate word, but I think Hamilton's gone maybe not as big in that specific demigod status, but I think he's gone beyond that in global culture.
Yes, Jack, I think you're right, and one of the reasons for that, and this is very pertinent to now, is because he's black. You know, He is the only ever black F1 driver, so even from the very beginning he stood out from the crowd as a sort of standard bearer and trendsetter in that sense. And now that you know, in the wake of the anti-racism protests that have sort of burst out into the open around the world following the death of George Floyd in May, he's grabbed that as an opportunity to push forward something that he's obviously felt very strongly about all his life, and as he would do as a black man who's obviously grown up and experienced racism, and he's now got the opportunity to make a difference on that front, and it's clearly something that's very important to him, and it's clearly something that he's not going to let go of.
But he's changed so much in the years. Do you remember when he came into Formula One, 2007, and TV couldn't get an interview with him to at risk of trying to interrupt his flow for the race, and he was super quiet, very shy. Then became extrovert really in the sort of end of McLaren years. But social media seems to have made is obviously the big difference now from the likes of Ayrton Senna's day and the other big names. Well, Hamilton's got this platform to say what he wants, and you're right, Andrew, he is very passionate about Black Lives Matter. He's also very passionate about veganism, and it was only 8 months ago that he was posting he couldn't sleep at night and he couldn't see how the rest of the world couldn't see what he was seeing, and, you know, super passionate about veganism. He was posting only this week about, well, he got caught up in a coronavirus vaccine misquote, really, but he's very passionate about many issues outside of Formula One. It's almost like Formula One now is what he does, but it's not enough for him. He wants to transcend, he wants to make a difference in society, and what he's doing in driving in Formula One gives him the platform to do something better and bigger in the rest of the world.
It's interesting, today he was speaking on, you know, the break that we were forced to take with Formula One with COVID-19, and he was saying actually that's kind of re-energized him. He thinks it's added to his longevity. He's not the only driver to have said that, but he also stated about, you know, having another 3 years potentially in the sport, and I haven't heard him talk so definitively about staying, wanting to be in F1, committing to F1 like that before. And is that just another part of him kind of being more definite about who he is, about what he wants in the future, Jack?
I think him being who he is a big part of that change Jolyon was talking about, and I'm not proclaiming to know who Lewis Hamilton is, but I think that in your time when you're a young black kid trying to make it in a white world, and you're at McLaren, which is the most regimented of or certainly was under the ownership of or the running of Ron Dennis, the most regimented team in Formula One, there was you had to conform at McLaren. Even Fernando Alonso had to have his hair cut short and all of that kind of stuff. If you're driving for McLaren, Andrew Benson would fit in beautifully. And so I think that he hasn't got any hair, that's the gag, just for you radio people. I think that when he moved to Mercedes, he's kind of flourished since then, for want of a better word. And I think you're right that, I mean, I personally, I think it would be too big a risk for him to stay on and race in 2022. I think he'll win the title this year. I think he'll win the title next year. He'll win 8 world titles, one more than Schumacher. He'll have the record. I think then, personally, for me, it's quite a big risk for him to stay on in 2022 with new regulations. He's getting a bit older. Do you want to lose that majesty of going out on top. I'm not 100% sure.
You're saying next year's his final year? This is a guy that's driving at the top of his game, leading the championship. He's just won the last however many. He's in the best team. He can be in the best team if he wants to stay in the best team. Yeah, the rules change, but the team that he's with will be somewhere near the best team.
37, and you've had domination for 7 or 8 years. You're clearly the greatest in the sport. Do you hang on to maybe win a night?
Schumacher kept going, didn't he? Schumacher came back.
How did that? Yeah, but Schumacher came back and then ended up looking a little bit worse than he did if he'd have just retired initially.
Well, the problem was he retired in the first place, though, wasn't it? He should have kept going.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a fair point.
3 years off didn't do any favours.
Also, we should just add that he's literally said today, Lewis Hamilton, that he foresees himself staying for at least another 3 years.
No, I agree, and that's why
he's going to Jack Nicholls isn't his manager. You've been telling him to hang up his helmet next year. Blimey.
No, I know he said that today, Andrew. That's why we're having the conversation. That's why the 3 years I find a little 2022. That just feels sketchy for me.
Oh my goodness me. Okay, this is the usual standard 5 Live Formula One if you haven't listened before. Now, where does Lewis Hamilton rate when it comes to the likes of other sports people? Because if I think of those who transcend their sport, you're looking at the likes of Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, those sorts of people. Is it fair to compare him to those people, Jolien? Is he bigger than all of them?
He is becoming synonymous with Formula One in the modern age, that is for sure. Everyone who knows anything about Formula One will know the name Lewis Hamilton, if not what he looks like and that he's the champ. Comparing him to other sportsmen, he's right up there. He's absolutely right up there. And the fact that he puts himself out there on so many issues above Formula One, he makes the news headlines regularly on his views on COVID, on veganism. He makes it, and he's got really passionate views about them. He's a big name. He's in the celebrity sphere, which no other driver on the grid is or has been for a very long time. Certainly, I don't think in my lifetime. Michael Schumacher was not in the celebrity sphere like Lewis Hamilton is. And to be honest, the likes of Lionel Messi, sure, huge name in sport, one of the greatest, if not the greatest footballer of all time. But in terms of outside the sport, what else he does, I think Hamilton is fairly unrivaled, to be honest. There are a few other huge names from history, but Hamilton, he's putting himself right up there in terms of global figures that have come from sport.
Jack, I thought you were going to come in then.
No, I know. I was just thinking that maybe sort of Serena Williams is an example of that. Who's so she's fairly outspoken about feminism and having had.
Отлично. Шалость удалась, как говорится. Можно продолжать свое победоносное шествие. Ну, в данном случае не шествие, а поездку. Продолжаем.
It's how these sports people decide to use their platform is ultimately up to them, and I think it's very honourable when people try and do it for the better.
Okay, we will come back to talk more Formula One, but we must cross over to Craven Cottage because the football is just about to end. Alistair Bruce Ball.
We're in the last minute of added time, and Cardiff have just gone extremely close again. They lead 2-1 on the night, but they need another goal to try and take this tie to extra time because Fulham lead 3-2 on aggregate. They are doing everything they can to slow this game down, taking their time over the throw-ins and the goal kicks, and we've just seen the substitute striker, Robert Glatzel, thump a volley over. He hit it so well from a 45-degree angle, about 15 yards out. He just couldn't quite keep it down, and it's gone fizzing over the cross crossbar. So my stopwatch tells me 15 seconds to play. Fulham at the moment lining themselves up for a Wembley date on Tuesday night in the Championship playoff final against West London rivals Brentford. Those two, as it stands, will play for a place in the Premier League next season. Cardiff going with another long throw down the left-hand touchline. Our referee Paul Tierney's having a look at his watch. The Cardiff players are saying, come on, you've got to give us a little bit more time here. Fulham have been time wasting over the last 10 minutes or so. But we're nearly there, and Fulham are nearly there. They are trying to get back to the Premier League at the first attempt, having been relegated last season. The season before that, they were successful in the playoffs. They beat Aston Villa in the final, and it looks like it will be them against Brentford on Tuesday night. The game gets back underway, but that's it. The full-time whistle blows at Craven Cottage. Fulham lose on the night, but they have done enough to get through this semi-final. Cardiff win the game 2-1, but Fulham win the tie 3-2, and we have a tantalising West London derby to look forward to on Tuesday night at Wembley. It will be Fulham against Brentford for a place in the Premier League.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Well, what a game that will be. Fulham, Brentford on Tuesday. Right, we've spoken about Lewis Hamilton. We've spoken about Sergio Perez and his positive COVID test. We should speak about Ferrari as well, because whilst Mercedes appear to be just in their own league at the moment, Ferrari seem to be, well, in bits really. This season they have a car that is more than a second a lap slower than Mercedes. They're fifth in the Constructors' Championship as things stand. This week we found out they've restructured their technical department, and Ferrari chairman John Elkann came out and said the team can't expect to compete until 2022. So, is their young driver Charles Leclerc frustrated?
No, there's no frustration. I think it's we need to be honest in tough times, and it's not easy. It will require quite a lot of work to get back to where we want to be, but at the moment we are just not where we would like to be. So a lot of work ahead. No frustration, just motivated to try and do things better and to work in the best ways possible to see the how do you say that? The improvement.
I always think of Formula One teams a little bit like a cruise liner. You can make a change, but it takes, like steering forever for to actually see it move, to actually see a change happen. Andrew Benson, chief F1 writer. When it comes to what they're trying to do at Ferrari, this is going to be a long burn, isn't it, until they see a result?
Well, it's already been a long burn, Jenny, hasn't it? Their last World Championship was in 2008. The closest they got in the last decade was 2010 and 2012, and that was not with the best car. That was with a driver driving out of his skin. And then they had great chances with Vettel in 2017 and 2018, when they did have probably the best car for a large part of those seasons, but they dropped the ball in one way or another, and then they seem to have lost their way again since the aerodynamic rules changed for 2019, and they're all over the place, aren't they? And the fact of the matter is they've not really had, they've not looked consistently competitive for a very, very long time, and in a way it's good that they've acknowledged that they've got a fundamental structural problem in the team, which is basically what John Elkann, the chairman, was saying this week. But you don't fix fundamental structural problems overnight. In actual fact, he's very bullishly in some ways predicting being competitive in 2022. What makes them think that they'll be able to change things around quickly enough to be ready for that? Because they've basically got to start designing that car very soon.
The changes that they've made, the restructuring, who wants to take this on? Jack? It's hardly the biggest restructuring in the world, I would be tempted to say.
No, and I'm a bit disappointed with all of this from a Ferrari point of view, to be honest, because since Mattia Binotto came in, overall, I felt positive in that he's a very talkative man. He's very good with his words, I would say, and everything he said seemed to be the right thing to say, and things were moving in the right direction. And then this year's car has been terrible. Leclerc and Vettel had a collision in Austria, and he sort of then spouted out the same old oh, we'll just move on from this, like he did in Brazil last year, where nothing's clearly been moved on from. I think they dealt with the dropping of Sebastian Vettel a little bit bizarrely, personally, from my point of view. And then now, they're like, one of the things in this technical restructuring is they're bringing in a man called Rory Byrne, who was, no doubt, a very impressive Formula One tech guy. He, a technical engineer. He was part of the Schumacher team, basically, that moved from winning world championships with Schumacher in 94 and 95 at Benetton, over with Schumacher, Jean Todt, Ross Brawn, to Ferrari in 96 and started the Schumacher dominance. So great, on paper, great. He's 76, and that's not a criticism of old people, but it's criticism of someone who, we were talking just then about Esteban Gutierrez hasn't been in an F1 car for 3 years or whatever. He'll be a little bit out of touch. Even Hulkenberg's been out for, a couple of months. Maybe he'll be out of touch. This is a man who hasn't been in the sharp end of Formula One really for a while. I mean, he's been part of the team and everything, but it just feels like such a backwards, regressive step, Andrew.
Well, I think they're doing it because actually he was involved in the design of the 2017 car. If you remember what happened for 2017 with these major new rule changes, cars were made bigger, wider, faster by like 5 seconds a lap or something. And Ferrari, for that year, had probably the most innovative car in the field, and it was for a long time, as I was saying a minute ago, the quickest. And Rory Byrne was involved very heavily in the design of that car. Then he went back into a sort of more background role, and lo and behold, the 2019 car, because the 2018 car was just a development of the 17 car, the 2019 car was rubbish, really, because although they won some races last year, 3, and Leclerc got more pole positions than anyone else, 7, that a lot of that was based on the power from their engine, but they were gaining in some circuits like a second a lap on the straights on everybody else. And then the FIA, after all the teams started complaining, the FIA started to look into it and started issuing clarifications and technical directives here, and lo and behold, over the winter, Ferrari have lost loads of engine performance, and actually the car performance has improved from one year to the next. It's just the engine has dropped off a cliff. So I think that's why they brought Rory Byrne back, because he was involved in the design of that very innovative car in 2017. They're hoping he can pull the same magic out of the bag for 2022. But it is right, you are right to say, Jack, that it's a bit of an indictment of the rest of the Ferrari structure if they have to keep going back to Rory Byrne, even if he is one of the all-time great F1 designers. Where's the new generation and where's the new management structure? That's the big question, I think.
Yeah, and why drop or use Rory Byrne less in the first place and that sort of thing? But with the engine thing specifically, Andrew, how big an issue is that going to be for Ferrari? Because we're in a stage where the engines can't be changed a huge amount going forward in Formula One. So it's that to me seems like their biggest disadvantage, is that they've almost got to start from scratch with the engine rather than necessarily the car itself.
Well, you're limited in what you can do to engines each year, but over the winter you can change your engine. They haven't introduced a freeze yet, and Ferrari obviously will be voting against any idea of an engine freeze in the near future.
But it's a possibility, isn't it, that the freeze will come and they're frozen next year with a terrible engine.
Not if Ferrari vote against it, though.
Yeah, Ferrari can just veto it, can't they? So, but can they fix it? That's the problem, But I think they did have a competitive engine in 15, 16, 17 and 18, and if you talk to rival teams, they only started to see this sort of crazy advantage from the sort of very last end races of 2018 and then into 2019. So that would suggest that they can do it, but they've obviously been caught out by these changes in the technical directives. They'll have to find a way around those. Ironically, actually, Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, was saying at the last race in Hungary, one of the reasons Mercedes have made such a big step forward this year is because they've made massive progress with their engine, and they made that because they thought they had to make it. Wolf was saying because Ferrari had so much of an advantage last year.
Little did they know, eh?
Yeah, so in a way, Ferrari have brought on their own downfall by making Mercedes go even better than they already were. You know.
Well, talking about trying to find solutions to problems, let's look at Red Bull, because Daniel Ricciardo's old race engineer at Red Bull, Simon Rennie, has been brought back into the team from the factory to try and help out Alex Albon for this weekend. He replaces Mike Lugg. Let's listen to Albon on the swap.
Firstly, there is no issue with Mike. Obviously, right now, the car is tricky to drive, and I think the team's choice was that we need some experience, and Simon brings that. He's been in Formula One for a very long time now, and with that, hopefully just point us in the right direction, and yeah.
How much contact have you had with him since the Hungarian Grand Prix?
Quite a lot. I've already worked with Simon beforehand. We've done a test in Barcelona last year, so also Simon's in charge of a lot of the sim duties that we do back at Milton Keynes, so I see him a fair bit.
Jolyon, as a former driver, what is that relationship like with your race engineer, and how significant is it that they've changed Albon's?
It's a very important relationship. The engineer, the race engineer, is the driver's main confidant in the team, really. Apart from setting up the car to hopefully maximise the performance, they're the driver's main go-to guy in the team. They spend a lot of time together, and they are kind of like the core duo, really. They galvanise the rest of the mini team on one driver's side of the garage. So it is really important, and I think it's quite big actually that they have changed the engineer. Mike Lugg basically swapping roles, it seems, with Simon Rennie, who is a known quantity to Red Bull. He used to work with Daniel Ricciardo, was very successful, that partnership. Ricciardo won a few races, and Albon, to be honest, he's been struggling a bit. He moved to the team last summer and replaced Pierre Gasly, who was also struggling, and then Albon initially looked like there was a bit of progress, but that's kind of halted, and now I don't see a massive difference between what Albon's doing and what Gasly's doing. So Red Bull now are clearly looking at themselves as much as the other driver, the second driver, Verstappen's teammate, and they've made a change.
I think that's the key part of it, is that Gasly was struggling as well, and they're basically the same, and the similar factor, unfortunately, is Mike Lugg, who was brought in new at the end of last year. I believe he was brought in because Ricciardo requested him to come in once Simon Rennie was stepping away from the team. He had been in Formula E, Mike Lugg, and he stepped up to Red Bull. So whether it makes a huge difference or not, it'll be fascinating to see, because it conceivably could, because at the moment it's inconceivable that both Gasly and Albon have been so far away from Verstappen.
The only thing
inconceivable is strong, but
But the only thing is, you can have with the race engineer, you can have a lesser experienced race engineer can get lost on the setup, not quite go in the right direction. But you'd have thought over a year and a half they would have kind of lucked into a good one. At least one in every 3, you'd end up on a good setup. And that car, the second Red Bull car, for a year and a half now, has been averaging about half a second behind Verstappen. That's continuing now on 1 lap pace. That's the big problem. It might give Albon a bit of confidence, it might help a little bit, but I think it'll be a long process for Albon and Simon Rennie to start picking up the results.
We must have a word before we go about the other Brits. Albon, of course, is a British Thai driver, but Lando Norris, George Russell, Jack, yes, the fans won't be there, but they'll be pumped for 2 races at Silverstone.
Yeah, Norris and McLaren is the exciting thing, isn't it? I think that's kind of the good British story coming into this race. Williams' resurgence and George Russell is good, but Norris is in for a really good race potentially. He got a podium in Austria, and he ran a competition for people to design his helmet on the social media, and the winner was a 6-year-old
a 6-year-old, and it just says like Lando Norris written in sort of paint on the side of his helmet. It's really, really, I think it's really cool.
It is very cool. It's nice to be inclusive. And the final bit of news we need to talk about is 3 more races have been added. Nürburgring, Portimao and Imola, bringing the number of races confirmed to 13. Sebastian Vettel described Nürburgring in October as the German Siberia. Could be anywhere from sort of 0 to 20 degrees. That's going to be fun, isn't it, Jolien?
Can't
Put your
wait.
ice tyres on.
All 3 of those tracks, I'm really excited for Portimao and Imola. They are, well, a great track and a legendary track. But Nürburgring in the snow could be, if they run, an awful lot of fun.
Have we had a snow race before?
Jenny, I've been at the Nürburgring in May when it's been snowing, so it can definitely snow in October.
Oh, good grief. Right, well, there's plenty more to come. Remember, you can listen to the Silverstone at 70 show. That's available to download via BBC Sounds, and we shall be back tomorrow morning. I would say bright and early, but everything's a little bit delayed, isn't it, Jack? We're on slightly later than usual with Free Practice 1.
Yeah, 10:55, so no excuse not to be there on the BBC Sport website. Are we on Sports Extra? I can't remember.
Probably. I'll just say probably.
Yeah, tune into
Someone will
Sports
tell me.
Extra. If we're not there, go on the BBC Sport website. Yes, we are. We
Yes,
are.
we got
Go
a
on
thumbs
Sports
up.
Extra.
That's excellent news. My thank you to Andrew Benton. Stay safe in Silverstone tomorrow morning. Plenty to look forward to. I'll bring you the latest on Sergio Perez testing positive for COVID, and a replacement driver will be found by Free Practice 1. That's all from us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Coming up, it's Stephen Nolan after the latest BBC News.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. This is Erica Fisher. In the past hour, the government has announced new restrictions for areas of northern England because of an increase in the number of coronavirus cases. From midnight tonight, different households will be banned from meeting each other indoors. The measures apply to Greater Manchester, East Lancashire and parts of West Yorkshire. The Health Secretary Matt Hancock said the decision had been made after consulting local leaders across the region.
We take this action with a heavy heart, but unfortunately it's necessary because we've seen that households meeting up and a lack of social distancing is one of the causes of this rising rate of coronavirus, and we'll do whatever is necessary to keep the country safe.
Quarantine restrictions have also been reimposed on those returning to the UK from Luxembourg because of rising virus rates. From midnight, people who travel there will have to isolate for 14 days. The rule is already in place for travellers from Spain. Official figures have confirmed that England had the highest rate of excess deaths in Europe at the start of the pandemic. The Office for National Statistics compared the number of deaths between the end of February and mid-June with the 5-year average. Paul Hunter, a professor of health protection at the University of East Anglia, says the real figures may be worse still.
Early on in the outbreak, there were quite a few extra excess deaths over and above COVID-19 deaths. And if you look at before the outbreak came, deaths this year were generally below average. So if that was going to continue, that would suggest that the figures that we're seeing there may well even be an underestimate of the total number of fatalities.
Donald Trump's suggestion that November's US presidential election should be postponed has been widely condemned by figures from both main parties in America. In a tweet, Mr. Trump said increased postal voting would make the poll the most fraudulent in history, but provided no evidence for his claim. Speaking at the funeral of the civil rights campaigner John Lewis, Barack Obama launched a strong attack on his predecessor without referring to him by name.
There are those in power who are doing their darndest to discourage people from voting by closing polling locations and targeting minorities and students with restrictive ID laws and attacking our voting rights with surgical precision.
More than 200 migrants have crossed the Channel to the UK in small boats, a record number for a single day. The Home Office has described the number as unacceptably high. Charities are calling for the government to establish safe and legal routes for migrants. Jackson Carlaw has resigned as the leader of the Scottish Conservatives after only 6 months in the job. He said he wasn't the best person to lead the case for Scotland remaining in the UK ahead of next year's Holyrood election. The weather, rain in Scotland and Northern Ireland will clear clear overnight. The rest of the UK will be dry with long clear spells. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 10.
Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Welcome along. In the last hour, the Health Secretary has declared local lockdown measures in parts of Northern England.
We've decided that we need to take action across Greater Manchester, East Lancashire and parts of West Yorkshire. So from midnight tonight, we are banning households meeting up indoors. Households meeting up and a lack of social distancing is one of the causes of this rising rate of coronavirus, and we'll do whatever is necessary to keep the country safe.
So there you have it. From midnight tonight, 2 households are to be banned from meeting indoors in Manchester, parts of Lancashire and West Yorkshire. Does this show just how worried the government is about a second spike? We're not out of the woods yet. That's the stark message from the Prime Minister as Boris Johnson warns of a resurgence in the pandemic.
It is absolutely vital as a country that we continue to keep our focus and our discipline, and that we don't delude ourselves that somehow we're out of the woods or that this is all over, because it isn't.
We learned today the UK has seen Europe's biggest rise in death rates in the months until mid-June, according to the Office for National Statistics. England saw the largest increase in death rates in Europe, with Scotland
slowness to get hold of the PPE challenges in our country, the slowness to protect care homes and much more, I'm afraid has had these awful, awful consequences.
Karen's twin sister Paula was a fitness instructor who died after catching the virus.
Thousands of people, including my sister, are dead. These people will still be alive today if the government and Boris would have acted on this immediately.
Is that fair? Is it right to lay the blame at the government's door? What about anyone who's travelled abroad in the last month or so? People not wearing masks in shops, younger people attending raves? Or are we simply at the mercy of what's happening in other countries? Here's the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, speaking earlier today.
We can see, sadly, a second wave of coronavirus that's starting to roll across Europe. We want to do everything we possibly can to protect people here and protect people from that wave reaching our shores.
Don't think you can easily hop on a plane to Spain to escape it all. You might end up stuck in quarantine on your return.
I wish I hadn't come to Spain now. I wanted to come away and I wanted a holiday, but I wouldn't have gone had I known that there would be the self-isolating on my return.
Even the Transport Secretary wasn't immune from the new ruling this week and had to rush back from his holiday in Spain.
We simply had to act, and not to act would have been a dereliction of duty. And people rightly would have said, of course, why have you not acted? Why have you got this information? You're not doing anything about it.
And if you do catch the virus or show symptoms of COVID, you'll no longer need to self-isolate for 7 days. It'll be 10.
These extra 3 days are clearly important now that national lockdown is coming to an end, where there were far fewer chances of us interacting with other people. Now the onus is on individuals to get a test if you have symptoms.
Who's to blame? 08085 909 693. Also tonight, jobs accident, retail, empty town centres, even the Argos catalogue has reached the end of the road. Is it the end of the high street as we know it? And also we're taking your calls tonight. Is it down to the government to solve the obesity crisis, or is it down to us? Here's how to get in touch.
This is BBC 5 Live. Call free 08085 909 693. Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Plus, see our privacy notice. bbc.co.uk/5 Live.
Stephen Nolan on BBC Radio 5 Live.
A developing story tonight. Within the last hour, the Health Secretary has announced further lockdowns in parts of Northern England. Here's what Matt Hancock had to say.
We're constantly vigilant, and we've been looking at the data, and unfortunately we've seen across parts of northern England an increase in the number of cases of coronavirus. So today I held a meeting of the government's Gold Committee, and working with local leaders, including, for instance, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, we've decided that we need to take action across Greater Manchester, East Lancashire and parts of West Yorkshire. So from midnight tonight, we are banning households meeting up indoors. We take this action with a heavy heart, but unfortunately it's necessary because we've seen that households meeting up and a lack of social distancing is one of the causes of this rising rate of coronavirus, and we'll do whatever is necessary to keep the country safe.
Our political correspondent, Nick Eardley. What's going on, Nick?
Quite frankly, Stephen, the government is really worried about a rise in cases in parts of the north of England and is putting it down in large part to people meeting up inside and not abiding by the social distancing rules, the 1 metre plus restrictions that we're all supposed to still follow when we are meeting people inside. And it's decided that it needs to put in place what are quite sweeping restrictions, really. When you think about some of the local restrictions we've seen so far, they've focused on towns or cities or even, small villages or particular areas. This is huge. This is millions and millions of people in Greater Manchester and parts of East Lancashire.
А между прочим, тот мужик, который сейчас на плакате был, в Евро на меня работает.
Pretty abruptly, because we got this about half an hour ago. 9:30 at night, people are being told that from midnight they're not allowed to meet up in each other's houses. It also fits in with the
what?
Well, good question, because we've not got the details yet. I don't know how this is going to be enforced. I suspect it will follow the similar pattern that we've seen so far, which is the government saying, look, we're urging you to do this, we want you to do it, we'll only enforce it in kind of really extreme or really serious cases. But it does follow what we've been talking about for the last few days, which is an increasingly cautious note coming from government. And after we saw a pretty big opening of the economy and holidays being rebooked and foreign restrictions being lifted, a lot of things are now being brought back slowly. It suggests the government is being more cautious and feels the need to act.
So, is it the case, Nick? And by the way, if you want to pick up the phone tonight, if you're in any of these areas, 08085 909 693. I'm trying to get my head around the implications and also the logic of this myself, and maybe you are if you live in one of these areas. The government's doing it. They would maintain to save lives, for safety, to curtail the virus. We know how quickly it can spread. But Nick, is it therefore the case that we have a situation from midnight tonight where people, a couple of neighbours will not be able to go into each other's houses, but they'll be able to pack onto a bus or a tube a mile down the road together with 100 other people, or they'll be able to go into a restaurant with 100 other people, but 2 people can't go into each other's house in the same area?
Yes, that is exactly what you're going to see.
How's that logical?
This is one restriction that the government is bringing in, which is the meeting up indoors with other households. So it sounds to me like the big worry is in government, and I have to emphasise, Stephen, that I've not seen the details yet. All I've got is what we've got from Matt Hancock and a couple of chats with the government tonight. But it sounds to me like the government is worried about basically people going over to each other's houses and not following the rules, not sitting crowding around the table or whatever other ways that they're not following those restrictions. And they feel that they really need to act on this. They're worried about it. They don't think it's hyper-local. They think it's a wider issue.
So I would understand that if the government has data which would suggest that they're seeing some type of surge and they need to act quickly, I would understand that slightly more, Nick, if they were then imposing other restrictions. I think there are fair questions around why 2 people can't go into each other's houses, but as I've said, they can pack into a pub and get drunk and be relied upon to socially distance.
I mean, absolutely. I suppose one of, and nobody's told me this, but I suppose one of the ways that you could look at it is when you're out in a restaurant or a bar, in theory, the business is supposed to put in restrictions as well. And I know some people will say, well, we've not seen that everywhere. Maybe we've seen it in some places, but not in all the restaurants and pubs we've gone to. But I suppose when things are out in the open, it's a bit easier to check if people are following the rules. But as soon as you're away in a private home, it's not. And as I say, the government is concerned that when folk are going to each other's houses that they're not taking the measures they need to take. But you're absolutely right. People are going to question why you can do one thing and not the other. And that's something we've seen over the last few weeks. Why can you go to sort of just beside Spain but not go to Spain? In theory, you can travel into Spain and then back. So, there's a lot of things in this that need more explanation, I think.
And we shouldn't forget about the top line here. If I read the very first sentence that I can see here of what Matt Hancock is saying,
ну что ж, это была долгая поездка, но и опыта я получил прилично. Напомним, на данный момент моя цель 20 уровень, чтобы наконец уже нормальный грузовик купить. Так, что у нас там? Окей.
From what I can see, and maybe we'll get this detail later.
О, привет, Скример. Я сегодня без второго монитора, извини, сразу не заметил. Нет, у меня не Кенвард, а подожди. Ты еще здесь? Или тебя уже здесь нет? Ну-ка. Сегодня без второго монитора, блин. А, тебя уже нет. Ну ладно. Я тебе потом напишу. Потому что сейчас уже все. Я уже хотел прощаться. Слушай, бег был офигенным. Пора сделать перерыв. Спасибо всем, кто смотрел, слушал, обонял и осязал. И типа все. Возможно, я еще сегодня буду стримить, но пока не знаю. Ну, короче, на данный момент всем пока.